Championship Wrestling, bringing you great wrestling action, sanctioned by the NWA, National Wrestling Alliance.
Not Bray Wyatt. And he says it's his first attempt, so go easy on the guy. Here we go.
Tomohiro Ishii versus Togi, I believe it's,
Makabe.
Yeah, Makabe. The meanest mean guy I've ever seen.
No, dude. You need to get NJWorld.com and just watch all of Ishii's.
They're all like this.
They're all crazier.
Yes.
Why is it so fast? Go watch the Ishii Tanahashi from, I can't remember what it was. It was a couple years ago. This was the greatest of all time.
Yes. So they were each other in the face a lot, hitting these very, very high-angled just falling right down on the back of their very uncomfortable.
On to the bad.
On the bad the one dude had. I believe it was Ishii had a bad.
Yes, Ishii. Okay.
I know I talk fast.
I don't know what happened there. Maybe it was at a weird sample rate. Thank you, Wyatt. Try again next time.
That was a good try.
All right. Now we go back 30 years. NWA Championship Wrestling. I was 10.
I had just turned 10 the month before.
My wife was unborn.
Yeah. What's your wife's birthday?
November 23rd, 86.
Oh, this is exactly 1 year before she was born.
That's right.
How about that?
No, September 23rd, sorry.
Oh. Still, I don't mean to get graphic with you, Brian, but she had not yet been conceived.
No.
No.
Maybe she was conceived during this show. During this black
match. Barge match. Or Black Cat.
Yeah.
Showed clips of the Four Horsemen, not using that name, but it was Ric Flair, the Andersons, and Tully Blanchard. Or as David Crockett referred to them, these four guys. They were menacing Magnum TA and Dusty Rhodes when the Road Warriors ran out to make it a fair fight, and so, of course, the Horsemen backed down. That was the clip from a prior show. Opening match was Terry Taylor versus the Black Cat with David Crockett on commentary.
Vinny, in your career, you never did any studio wrestling, did you?
Can't say that I did.
I did. In Portland.
I have wrestled before many crowds much smaller than this one.
Hell yeah.
But they were not in studios. They were in much larger buildings.
This was every studio wrestling show there ever was.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a ring. There's a bunch of people there. Cameras.
I would have guessed about 150, no more than that.
Yep.
And they squeeze them all on two sides of the ring. And the other side of the ring is just nothing over there. And the fourth side of the ring is it's facing the commentary area.
Yeah.
Where they do commentary and interviews.
And you're doing television, and so it's just a bunch of nothing happening matches and a couple angles. And there's a big-ass long sheet with all of the matches, and you just see your name and the other guy's name, and you're told, like, so-and-so's getting his hand raised. 2 minutes. You go over one spot, and you get out there, and you do your match, and you go to the back, and it's like, wow, that was awesome. That was his show, top to bottom. Terry Taylor versus the Black Cat.
Yes.
Taylor, the national heavyweight champion.
There were about 50 belts floating in and out of this territory from time to time.
That's right.
And Terry Taylor had one of them.
They wrestled. They exchanged holds. And then Terry Taylor won with a superplex. And that was all she wrote.
It was a fine squash match.
1 minute, maybe two.
May I talk about David Crockett?
Well, you can try. I'll jump in here pretty soon.
All right.
This guy, God bless him. Let's start with that.
I'm sure he's a nice guy.
I'm sure he's a great guy.
I'm sure he showed up for work on time every day.
That I'm not sure of.
He was so horrible.
Oh, my God.
Now, there's a worse segment later when he had to try to pontificate on the Flair Rhodes feud and he tried to cut a promo, and he got lost several times. But here, just calling a match.
Oh, I was actually jumping forward to when he was pontificating.
You can do that too.
But go ahead and call the match.
Just crying out move names. I mean, crying out, screaming move names. And if we didn't know what else to say, he would just say, look at him. Look at him. Look at him. All the time.
Oh, that got worse later.
I cannot say, if I'm being 100% honest, he was so much worse than Michael Cole. Now, worse does not mean less entertaining. because at least this man had enthusiasm.
That is true.
He thought every babyface was the best wrestler in the world, and he thought every heel was the most dastardly villain he'd ever seen.
Yes.
So at least he cared. But God, he was terrible. Tony Schiavone and David Crockett. Oh, this is the segment.
Yeah, this is it right here.
It's right here. They were talking about the Horseman feud and hanging out together, and they were trying what sounds like a very simple idea. Trying to say that they did not understand why a great wrestler like Ric Flair would resort to such underhanded and violent tactics that he had been doing lately.
You're already better than David Crockett.
I know.
Who did this for a living. Although
I'm
I guess
well
you do as
aware
well. You know,
that I'm better than David Crockett.
Here's what I have to say in defense of David Crockett. If you watch a lot of old studio wrestling shows from the 70s and the 80s, there were a lot of guys like David Crockett. There were a lot of guys who really you would not consider very good at their jobs. There were commentators who kind of sucked. There were announcers who kind of sucked. There were all sorts of people that kind of sucked. I think part of the issue is that there are some guys today that are scripted, and they can perform their script just fine. Triple H, for example. Guy reads his scripts just fine. He can go out there and talk for 20 minutes. He's got a script. I don't need to see it every week, but the guy can do it.
Sure.
These guys just had to go out here and wing it.
That's true.
They had an hour, and I guess 2 hours, if you take out the commercials. Mm-hmm. They had a 2-hour show, a 2-hour studio show, with a bunch of nothing matches, and they had to build up the main angles in Starrcade. The problem was he just rambled on and on and on.
I use the word, in fact, I brought that up in my notes here. When I'm recapping Raw, I use the word rambled a lot. Rambled is not what they're doing on Raw.
No.
Droning, perhaps.
Droning is, yes.
They're going on far too long. David Crockett, stream of consciousness rambling is what this was. I think he would have an easier time doing a 500-pound bench press than completing a sentence.
Yeah, like Dave does stream of conscious for 15 straight minutes, but it's compelling.
Sure.
Not David Crockett.
No.
I'm talking Dave Meltzer can.
Yeah.
David Crockett can't even get a word out. Like, I was just yelling, just spit it out, dude. What are you trying to say? Just
any kind
say
of point.
The words.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Suddenly, this got awesome. They cut to a bit where Bill Apter was sitting in a chair, Ric Flair was sitting in another chair, and Apter was interviewing Flair. And behind them, through the magic of TV, Dusty Rhodes was on the screen cutting a promo on Flair.
In front of them. Because we were looking at their backs.
I see.
Yes.
That's fine.
They were watching the TV, I'll give them that.
They were watching the TV.
You could not see Ric Flair's face. He was back to the camera.
But the great thing, the best thing about this was, it's not like they lowered a TV from the ceiling. They put the image on via TV magic. So the whole time this is going on, Apter and Flair were pretending to watch this promo.
Yes.
Staring at the NWA logo, whatever they had on the wall.
It was, as they called it back then, a blue screen.
Yes.
Today, a green screen.
Yes. So Dusty's cutting this promo. He's running Flair down, and Flair loses his mind. And he jumps to his feet, and he begins to cut a promo on Dusty. And as soon as he starts to talk, the Dusty promo fades away, and we get at least 30 seconds of irate Ric Flair screaming at a blank wall.
Yeah.
This was so awesome.
It was great. Ric Flair cut a promo on a wall.
A wall.
And it was a better promo than anything I've seen on Raw in years, I think.
Oh, yeah.
This promo that he cut on the wall.
And don't mean the WCW wrestler, the wall. This was a literal wall.
Yeah. You know what's funny is before it happened, they said, hey, we're going to go to this footage or whatever. They threw to it, as they say in television. And as they threw to it, I believe David Crockett said, we're about to see Ric Flair yelling at a wall.
it's something along those lines.
And then we saw Ric Flair yelling at a wall.
They weren't hiding it. Don Kernodle versus Don Turner.
Well, let's just get to the... no, you're jumping way ahead. First off...
I did jump away.
Flair and Dusty are on a collision course. That's a key to this whole thing because Starrcade is coming up. And it's Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes. Flair broke his ankle, and Dusty is going for his revenge. He's going for his third NWA World Heavyweight title.
Let's not gloss over the ankle breaking, by the way.
Yes.
Ric Flair was the world champion, and though he was an evil man, it was his duty to face other evil men like the Russians.
Yeah.
So he was defending the world championship in a steel cage match against the evil Nikita Koloff. And the Russians were about to finish him off, and Dusty Rhodes hates Ric Flair, but damn it, he's an American. So he hits the cage to chase the Russians away, and they flee. And Ric Flair pays this man back by having his buddies only an arm run out. They latch the cage door, and they triple team him to death and break his fucking ankle. These bastards.
It's awesome.
Yes. So Dusty's out, taken out. He is coming back. There was I watched a few of these over the weekend, just bits and pieces. They had a bit with an interview with his doctor. They had his special custom-made boot to protect his ankle that he's wearing. He has, if you look at the clip they showed, he had one of his regular cowboy wrestling boots on, and the other boot was just very white and bulky. That's a special boot. And
the demon is in that boot.
He made his comeback match, and he squashed against Mike Davis, beating him with the figure four, Ric Flair's own weapon. And then Crockett interviewed Dusty. This was not done in the studio show. This was done somewhere else. And Dusty cuts this great promo about how he wants revenge on the Andersons and Flair. Talks about the thousands of letters the fans have written to him about coming back and being world champion again.
I'll bet you anything that's true.
I'm sure it is.
I'll bet thousands and thousands of letters were sent in for Dusty
handwritten letters.
Yeah.
He says Flair is yella. Then he has the great line, because they were to sort of note, this boot is steel reinforced, but it is not a weapon. It is about protection. And then Dusty gets a little bit of twinkle in his eye. He says, if there's a devil in that boot, Ric Flair, you put it there. Implying, I'm going to kick you in the face with this fucking steel-toed boot, you fucker.
It was awesome.
Yes.
Between the Flair promo and the Dusty promo, one thing we can conclude is that promos were better in 1985.
Yes. That is fact. Not surprising, but fact. Okay, now, Don Carnolo versus Don Turner. Two things I loved about this. Actually, I take it back. Three things I loved about this. The very first thing they did, Carnolo grabs him and body slams him. And Turner sits up, and he puts a hand on the small of his back, and he closes his eyes, and he puts his other hand in the air. And the ref asks him, do you want to give it up?
Yeah.
Have you been body slammed into submission?
I just love it because, like, Kevin Owens always does a deal where he'll put a man in a headlock, and he will command the referee to ask the man if he wants to give up in his headlock. Mm-hmm. That's not what happened here.
No.
The referee, on his own accord, saw that a man had been slammed on his back.
It is my duty as an official.
And he had to check on him.
To protect the fighter.
Would you like to give up?
Don Turner, you have been body slammed in 5 seconds. Have you had enough? So Canolo, they were talking to me about him being an amateur wrestler, and they proceeded to wrestle. And usually when we say wrestling, actual chain wrestling in a pro wrestling match, we mean they are exchanging holds and transitioning from one hold or lock to another or doing various takedowns. No. Don Carnolo got on top of Don Turner. He laid across his chest and tried to pin both his shoulders to the mat, and Turner rolled back and forth trying to keep both shoulders off the mat.
That's right.
They fucking wrestled. They mentioned here the Starrcade was going to be such a big event. Some cities would even have it available on closed circuit TV.
Wow.
This is the future.
Holy smokes.
And finally, Canolo won with a power slam and a top rope lariat they called the American Cannon.
Yeah. Fun.
Very fun.
That was real fun. The Barbarian and a man named Stony Burke. Not to be confused with Stony Edwards.
No.
Who Vinny wrestled in his first ever match.
Yes.
One of the worst matches of all time.
Yes.
I wish we could go back and find that match.
So you got it somewhere.
Because
it
is very possible that there are squash matches on this show that may have been worse than you and Stony Edwards.
That is a fair question.
I'm pretty sure that Pez Watley's performance was worse than either you or Stony Edwards in your first match. But I digress. Stony Burke against the Barbarian in a squash match. Barbarian looked exactly the same as he did in 1996, except he had face paint on here, and he still
And a mohawk.
grunted and huzzah.
Yeah.
Did that whole gimmick.
He made noise the entire time.
They knew that this would be great, unlike many of the other squashes on this show. So they gave him, like, it seemed 5 minutes of
Probably about
Barbarian just killing him.
Just clubbing him.
It was so enjoyable. I loved it.
Barbarian looked exactly like Sheamus with a tan and face paint.
And Tongan.
And tongue. Well, I just said tan. He beat the hell out of the Stony Burke for a long time.
Vinny, if you tan a long time, you don't become Tongan.
I guess that's true. I wouldn't know.
Clearly.
But Paul Jones was Barbarian's manager. And at one point, Barbarian threw Stony Burke to the floor and then took the ref away. And Paul Jones went to interfere. And as we have noted many, many times, Paul Jones sucked. So by the time
Vinny.
Paul Jones interfered, the referee had turned back. The referee sees Paul Jones rakes the man's eyes. He can't call for the DQ, so all he can do is order Jones back to the corner. And Jones defends himself by screaming, "He jumped me!" That made me laugh.
Vinny's feud with the number one Paul Jones continues here in 2016.
So Barbarian destroyed this man. The crowd, by the way, all 150 people, nuts. He went nuts for this carnage and violence.
Oh, yeah.
And Barbarian finished him off with a power slam and a diving headbutt.
Awesome.
Crockett interviewed Flair.
I got to talk about this. Flair always talked about how he was a god of wrestling. He was, here in the Omni. Grown men worshiping Ric Flair in the middle of this promo. Ric Flair, by the way, who, as you noted earlier, destroyed Dusty Rhodes after Dusty Rhodes had saved him from evil Russians. He broke the man's leg. They are on a collision course. The diabolical heel Ric Flair, who is such a dick. If you watch the show from top to bottom, Flair is a dick the whole time. He's loved and cheered. Because the idea that there's a new audience watching WWE nowadays that is going to decide who they want to cheer and who they want to boo, and they're going to boo guys that the fans are supposed to cheer and vice versa. No, it's been going on like this forever. Ric Flair cheered like a god during this heel promo in 1985.
The promo was, don't get me wrong, it was a great Ric Flair promo.
They all are.
They all are. Aside from being appalled the announcers would question his actions and motivations lately, he mostly talked about how great he was and how terrible Dusty was. And if you've seen a Ric Flair promo and you know how great they are, you know how great this one was. What made this one different was not Flair, nor was it David Crockett. There was one particular Ric Flair fan. He wasn't even a fan. Ric Flair had a hype man. You know how sometimes guys will cut a promo on Raw and they'll finish a sentence and the whole crowd will go, "What?" This guy was doing that for Flair, only instead of saying "what" every time, he would react to whatever Flair said.
Yes.
Ric Flair would say, "I'm the world champion." And you hear the guy go, "Yeah." And Ric Flair would say, "I'm the best wrestler in the world." And the guy would say, "You tell him, Rick." And Flair says, "I have the biggest ego in the world." And the fan says, "Yeah." And then Flair says, "Dusty Rhodes, you say you have the biggest ego in the world." And the fan says, "No." And then finally Flair just wrapped up just some classic Ric Flair wheeling, dealing, styling and profiling stuff, and he made his exit. This was awesome.
This was great.
They very quickly ran down the Starrcade card.
They did, but you know what I found amazing about this segment? They ran down, there were like 13 matches on this Starrcade. 13 matches from 2 different locations. And they're running down the matches. And they're so excited about everything.
Absolutely.
And when you watch this show, this was kind of like a go-home show. They interviewed all sorts of guys that were on the Starrcade card. Everybody from Ric Flair to Black Bart. Actually, they didn't interview Black Bart. Who they interviewed?
Ron Bass.
Ron Bass, that's right. Interviewed all of these guys. And it really hit me that if you were a fan in 1985 going into this Starrcade and you were watching this show, look at all of the different options that you had.
Good point.
Look at all of the various stars that you could get behind.
You had cowboys.
You had cowboys.
Russians. Post-apocalyptic
Ric Flair.
warriors.
Exactly.
A guy from Oregon.
Exactly. And they're building up all the matches, and it just really hit me. If you're a WWE fan today and you don't care about the main event, do you really need to watch the show?
Nope.
Because they don't do jack shit for the rest of the card.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even promote the card. We had a Survivor Series pay-per-view with 2 Survivor Series matches. They didn't tell us who was in them. Meanwhile, in 1985, they built up the entire card. They made you want to care about everything. And you know what? Maybe you didn't care about everything. But if you didn't care about Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, maybe you cared about Ron Bass.
Sure.
Maybe you cared about superstar Billy Graham and the Barbarian, who are having a match on this show, which sounds fucking amazing. Just incredible. Like, that's why everyone's so depressed nowadays, is because if you don't like Roman Reigns, now you hate the show.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
That's about it, actually.
That's what this company has become.
You know what? That's actually a good goddamn point.
It is. If you don't like Roman Reigns or you don't like John Cena, it's like, well, fuck this. I don't want to watch it then.
Yeah.
Here, you don't like Ric Flair? Who gives a shit? Watch Superstar Graham or the Road Warriors.
Yes.
Or Manny Fernandez. Or any of these guys. They tried to make every single match important.
If you didn't like the main event guy, you would have your favorite guy, and your favorite guy would get a chance to shine.
That's right.
Yes. Whereas now, if your favorite guy is not one of the top 2 or 3, he's a geek.
That's exactly right.
People loved Zack Ryder. And with the very rare exceptions, they never got to see Zack Ryder do anything cool. So they tuned out.
I mean, imagine, if the fans like Zack Ryder, the idea should be, okay, well, you know what? We don't think he's going to be at the main event, but hey, let's let people like him.
Let's have him win.
Instead, it was, we don't think he should be a main eventer, so we don't want you to like him. So we're going to bury him and then take him off television.
Yeah. Right.
It's just amazing.
So I did not write down every match, but what I got from this was Sam Houston versus Crusher Khrushchev for the vacant Mid-Atlantic Championship, a bull rope match between Black Bart and Ron Bass, Billy Graham versus the Barbarian.
Can't even imagine.
I'm pretty sure they said this would be both a pro wrestling match and an arm wrestling match, both of which sound phenomenal. The Andersons versus Billy Jack Haynes and Wahoo McDaniel for the national tag titles. I wrote the Koloffs versus the Russians. I think one of those is supposed to be the Rock and Roll Express versus the Russians for the tag team championship. Tully Blanchard versus Arn Anderson in an I Quit. Arn Anderson. Tully Blanchard versus Magnum TA in an I Quit cage match for the TV title. A match that, believe it or not, I have never seen.
Wow.
I will have to amend that soon. And of course, Dusty versus Flair in the main event. My notes in that section got all bungled. Superstar Billy Graham versus Tony Zane.
There's some good news. The good news is that Billy Graham was no longer a ninja. He was back to being superstar.
I'd forgotten about that.
He looked exactly like Hulk Hogan. But you know what's funny? Superstar Billy Graham in 1985, with his tie-dye and horseshoe beard, looked exactly like Hulk Hogan in 2015.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No,
that's a rough, rough life.
Yes.
He was horrible.
He had yellow and red tie-dye, way over tan, bald with the Fu Manchu dyed blonde. They had a very, very bad match.
Dude, I would have a match with Superstar.
All right.
It would suck, but he would not touch me.
That's true.
He would be as light as a feather.
What I got out of this more than anything was Tony Zane was a TV jobber. He was skinny fat. Billy Graham gave him a terrible Irish whip into the turnbuckles. You should have seen this guy take this corner. He threw himself in these turnbuckles, and he recoiled his body back and forth in violent tremors. And I thought to myself, if I had been born 30 years ago, I could have been Tony Zane.
Could have been. He could have been Vinny Zane.
Vince Zane. Graham won with a bear hug.
David Crockett during this match was Vince McMahon in 1996. All he could talk about was Billy Graham's rippling muscles.
Biceps on top of biceps.
Look at that. Look at the rippling biceps. Look at them rippling muscles.
Funny part.
Look at his shitty match.
The best part was I'm staring. I was mesmerized by Tony Zane and his skinny fatness. And David, talking about superstars, says, look at his stomach muscles. And I am looking at I'm looking at
Tony Zane.
Tony Zane's Flab, thinking, where? I don't see any.
He was not talking about him.
No.
Fat, pale, and totally normal looking.
Yes.
An awesome jobber.
Oh, the best. The other thing about this is especially true by the end, they're jobbers. They were not, up-and-comers. They were not green rookies. They took dudes with no bodies and no tans, bad haircut. Many of them looked barely trained and threw them into the ring to get beaten.
See, that's what I was going to talk about later. I'll talk about it now. I need to ask Dave about this. Did these jobbers know they had no hope? Had they resigned themselves to the fact that they were never going to be anything? They were perfectly happy being jobbers. And so they went out of their way to look normal, ugly, pale, and fat. Not one jobber had a tan.
No.
Not one jobber was lean.
No.
Not one jobber had anything resembling a haircut you would not see your average accountant sport.
Right.
Every single one of them was as absolutely generic. They all looked like out-of-shape fans. Every one of them.
Yes.
They had to have known, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't care?
It's payday.
It's just like a group of men with no drive.
I guess
that
so.
enjoy getting in the ring,
just taking a beating once in a while,
being on television, and going back to work at the library. Is that what this was?
I guess so. Dave would know better than I would.
I got to ask him. I got to get one of them on the show for crying out loud.
Tony Zane did not think one day I'll be world champion main eventing the Army. No, Tony Zane said I will be losing 3-minute matches on TBS studios for the rest of my life.
And I guess he was totally happy with it. More power to him, I guess.
We're all dealt certain fates in life, Brian.
Hey, you know
you
what?
Play the card you're dealt.
Vinny, I've said this a million times. You can try. Okay, not one of these guys tried.
No.
There was no effort involved. Unless the effort was to make sure you were always a jobber.
They learned it just enough they could fall down and not die.
God, these guys. It was something else.
So it made it so great, though. The only truly good match on the show. And what a match this was. Manny Fernandez versus Buddy Landel.
Fernandez's hair achieved something I thought not possible, which was to have a worse haircut than Enzo Amore. He had it may have been a perm, I'm not sure, but it was definitely a mullet. And he was so proud of his mullet that he went to the barber, or the hairstylist, whatever you would call it, and he had the bottom part of his mullet bleached.
Yes. Just the long part.
What?
He thought it was cool. Who are you to question the Raging Bull?
I'm Brian Alvarez, and I've had a lot of bad haircuts.
Well,
Nothing like this.
You got one more to add to the
Nothing
list.
approaching this. It was so bad. Landell was out there blatantly being Ric Flair.
Yeah, on the same show.
I mean, same look, worked exactly the same.
Same nickname.
Same bumps.
Same finishing hold.
Everything.
Same chops.
Yeah.
You don't do a flop. That's the only thing you didn't do. Anyway, this match ruled. It's the most basic pro wrestling match in the world. People say, what is wrestling? You can do a lot worse than say this. Manny Fernandez was a babyface. He wasn't a babyface because he kissed ass to the fans. He wasn't a babyface because he was a pretty guy who sold a lot of t-shirts. He was a babyface because he was there to fight. And he stood in the middle of the ring, fists clenched, ready for action all the time. Buddy Landel was a heel. He wasn't a heel because he told fans to shut up.
Although he did.
Although he did.
He wouldn't stop talking.
He wasn't a heel because he cheated, although he did that too. He was a heel because whenever Manny was ready for action, Buddy was cowering in the ring, trying to find a way out of this mess. Cowering in the corner, I should say, trying to find a way out of this mess. It was very even for the first 5 minutes or so. Although in the end, Manny would almost always be on top. But he would come back here or there, and then Manny would cut him off. And when they did their high spots, it was just stuff like drop down, leapfrog, arm drag. It was not nothing you would, you'll watch any Lucha Underground match and you'll see 10,000 things more athletic than this. But when these guys fucking moved, they were running the ropes, going as fast as they could, and hitting each other as hard as they could, on shoulder tackles and stuff. there is an intensity to this old wrestling that is gone from Raw, where guys are clearly going through the motions.
Yeah,
every
Raw's
night.
no, it's not going through the motions. It's a performance.
Yes.
You are trying to perform. It is closer to Cirque du Soleil.
Yes. Or
than
ice skating.
a fight.
Yeah. These men were in a fight. It also helped. This is a much smaller ring than WWE has. So when they were running, they were going rope to rope to rope quickly. And because there are high spots, by the way, because they were moving so quickly and the high spots were so intense, even as a young fan, as a young boy watching wrestling, I was aware of what rest holds were and the purpose they served. So when guys were blown up, they needed a chance to catch their breath, they slap out a chin lock. When these guys here, they were working so hard, when they put on a rest hold, you felt like they have earned that rest. And in fact, I, as a fan, I could also use a rest. So thank you for doing that. Manny ended up bleeding from his terribly scarred forehead. I don't even think there was a spot. I think it just started spontaneously bleeding.
Sure, yeah. It wakes up like that sometimes.
I guess. There were a lot of chin locks, and the blood ended up smeared all over Buddy's shoulders, made it even better. And then Fernandez makes his big comeback, and they're trading punches, and Manny gets the better of that. He's running wild with forearms, and he goes up top. He tries a middle rope knee drop, but Landell dodges, and Fernandez crashes knees first into the mat, and Landell pounces with the figure four. Well, it appears to be the end. They fight back and forth for a minute, and then the bell rings, and it is a time limit draw. It was a beautiful wrestling match.
This was really good. It was a very good match. What was it called? What kind of series?
They had a name for it. They mentioned it briefly at the beginning and then talked more about it later. Something championship series. I
wasn't clear about what this
don't know what's
championship
going on and what championship is on
series
the line.
was, but it seemed like these were the main event caliber matches that we're going to get every week that are going to go very, very long.
Yes.
And then, a little bit later on, Jim Crockett Jr. comes out, and he announces the match for next week. And I thought, oh, well, this was a good main event style match. I wonder what the match next week is going to be. And he announces next week it will be the Road Warriors versus Black Bart and Thunderfoot. I don't expect a 15-minute time limit draw on that one.
Nor I. Also, that match, they explained, that's the match, but they said this is going to be a battle of managers. What? Because both teams have managers, I guess? All right. So Terry Taylor had worked the opener, and an hour had gone by. He had showered, cleaned up, put on a suit to come out for this promo.
That's right.
Like a true pro athlete.
He's going to go out on the town.
That too. He thanked all the fans for supporting him. He said he had a match with Buddy Landell at Starrcade. He vowed his super suplex would be too much for Landell.
The super suplex.
That's what he called it.
I just loved it because Terry Taylor's young, good-looking guy, good worker. Vince McMahon saw him, thought he'd make a great chicken. Like, can you watch this interview and not have that go through your mind?
That's all you can ever think about.
That this man looked at Terry Taylor, a very handsome man.
Oh, yeah.
Who could work, cut a good promo.
Do good talk.
Looked great.
He was a great heel, too.
And he thought, this man will be my Red Rooster. So it's funny when people go, I think Vince has lost his touch. I think Vince has lost his mind. His business has passed him by. Have you forgotten the shit Vince used to do?
He did the Red Rooster. So he finishes his promo talking about Landell, and he says, oh, by the way, I also hope the Rock and Rolls win their match, and of course I'll be cheering for Dusty Rhodes. That's the other great thing about wrestling in this era. All the baby faces were friends. All the heels were friends.
Yeah.
We'll get to that with Flair later.
And they all support each other.
And they all support each other. They all got
That's
each
the time he had
other's
a
back.
Dolph Ziggler promo and he goes, I'm really rooting for Dean Ambrose in that main event championship match.
Yeah.
Never.
No.
Everybody hates everybody else in WWE today.
Pretty
There are
much.
literally no friends unless you're brothers.
That's about it. Or you both have masks.
Sure.
So
Another Ric Flair promo.
there was yet another Ric Flair promo. Not that I'm complaining. But they explain the Warriors match for next week. And then Flair comes out to say, look, if you want this championship series thing to be important, you got to make me a part of it. He talked for a while about how he was going to beat up Dusty. There's more Flair to come.
Black Bart and Rocky King had a battle. It was very bad. Fucked up an arm drag.
The best thing was, King's running wild. And it's drop kicks and hip tosses, but it looks cool. He tries this arm drag, and it goes wrong, and Bart ends up on top, and you could almost see him think, well, I'll just take over now. He start beating him.
The thing that I was thinking when I was watching it was, it's Black Bart versus Rocky King. And all I could think was, who's the star? And it turned out it was Black Bart.
I'm afraid so.
I was like, what? Wrong man was the star in this match.
That's true. It got very boring once Black Bart was on offense. He won with a leg drop off the middle rope.
And this led to a Ron Bass promo.
Yes.
I thought this was a hell of a promo.
You're not wrong.
Hyped up a bull rope match with Black Bart. And this was where I was really thinking, there's so many characters on this show. And there's so many options for different matches that you can be excited about at Starrcade, not just the main event.
He explained he had once called Bart a friend, but now Bart had teamed with J.J. Dillon. They had vowed to put Bass out of wrestling. He said, I'm not going to get mad. I'm going to get even. I'm going to do it with this bull rope. He explained how the rope was a big, heavy rope, and it had a cowbell in the middle, and they were going to be tied to either end of it. And he was going to take Bart out, and then after he got Bart, he got 5 minutes with J.J. Dillon. This was one big, angry cowboy.
Oh, yeah.
Road Warriors came out for a promo. They ran down Flair, vowed to take him and the Andersons out in Philadelphia. Hawk ran down the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, said you would never last in Chicago. Animal called out Nikita Koloff, warned him, don't you ever use my name on TV. They sounded really pissed. Billy Jack Haynes versus Jim Jeffers.
Jim Jeffers was his name.
Not Jeff Jimmers.
Jim Jeffers.
Jim Jeffers.
Hayes had Oregon on his ass.
Mm-hmm.
Won. Full Nelson. And then he did this promo, and it's such a babyface promo. He says, want to say hi to my dad in Oregon?
Yeah.
Humble babyface. NWA is #1. He says that, man, they broke Dusty Rhodes' legs. When I get in there, I'm going to use my full Nelson. I'm going to break a neck. And then he apologized for yelling so much during his promo.
That's right. The other thing of this was there were a lot of great, big, strong men in this show. The Road Warriors. We saw clips of Nikita. We saw the Barbarian. Billy Jack Haynes' physique was so many levels above everyone else.
Oh, yeah. Best shape of his life, he said.
And I'm sure it's a coincidence that he was in WrestleMania like a year and a half later.
Yeah.
He was the first guy to end up working for Vince McMahon. And yes, he did note this sport's dangerous enough you don't need to intentionally hurt a man like the Andersons did. And then he vowed to intentionally break their necks.
Well, revenge.
Mm-hmm. Got a video package on the Russian team. This is mostly
Russians killing each other.
Nikita Koloff killing Americans. Mostly Nikita just clubbering and clotheslining dudes, and one jobber managed to take the flip inside-out bump, and they showed this in super, super slow-mo like he'd been killed.
You know what? It was because it was the mid-'80s, and this was VHS tape, and they slowed it down.
Yes.
And literally, you could have put this on a Faces of Death VHS and sold millions.
The great thing was they showed the move in super slow-mo, but they played the commentary from the match at regular speed and synced it up so that as he landed almost on his head is exactly when David Crockett screamed.
Yeah.
And that made it awesome. You know what wasn't awesome?
Oh.
They had a terrible 6-man tag team match.
Can't even believe this occurred.
Ron Bass and Pez Watley and the Italian Stallion were the stars against Carl Stiles and Kent Glover and Larry Clark.
Pretty sure everybody in this match sucked.
I'm quite certain.
It went 1 minute, thankfully, maybe 2. Pez did a flying headbutt.
Allegedly.
It had to be explained to me because I thought it was just a diving clothesline or something.
He flew through the air and they collided, and we were told it was a headbutt.
The only thing of note here was they put up the mailing address so that you could write letters to the stars. No internet.
No.
We put up a mailing address.
Not even a hotline.
No.
Just a place you could write letters and send postcards and letters to. And they noted some of the letters they had and wished happy anniversary to two fans who watched the show. That was so sweet.
And then...
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. This guy appears on screen. And I'm like, is that Billy Kidman or his dad?
This guy is the best possible way to describe him. There's
This guy.
this guy. Kind of think of it, he looked a little bit like Scott Baio
Kinda, yeah.
with a terrible haircut.
His name was Denny Brown, and he was the World Junior Heavyweight Champion.
And he had a cape.
And he cut the most hideous promo. His job was to come on television and hype up the matches at Starrcade. There's no way he was sober. He mumbled through a bunch of matches.
I'm not certain he was awake.
He fucked up half of them, just like you did earlier in the show.
Yes.
In fact, when you fucked up all those Starrcade matches earlier in this show, you did a better job than Denny Brown, World Junior Heavyweight Champion. And then he was wished well and went on his merry way.
He had nothing of his own to promote.
Oh, my God.
This was...
This was hideous.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen a promo that was definitely worse.
Oh, I'm sure there have been.
I'm sure there have been, but this is...
I haven't seen one worse this year.
That's probably true. All right, there you go. This was very, very terrible. Sam Houston versus my new favorite jobber name of all time. Golden Terror.
That's right, the Golden Terror.
Well, they called him the Golden Terror. The graphic just read Golden Terror, which I like even better.
Apparently, the Golden Terror was a multi-generational jobber gimmick. There have been Golden Terrors dating back to like the 40s and 50s.
That is awesome.
Just various Golden Terrors.
Like the Phantom.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this guy was a terror. You should have seen him take a corner.
He was a bad
my
wrestler.
God.
So Sam Houston's out there. He's very skinny. He's being this skinny young babyface. And Ric Flair comes out for more talking. Again, not a complaint. And here's where he went into the mode where all the heels were his friends. He said, you know, this Sam Houston, he's a great young wrestler, but he's not that level of myself. He's not able to hang with the Andersons or Buddy Landell, or I don't like the Russians, but they destroy this young man. Talking about how great all the heels were. So Houston hits a bulldog, and he appears to have the match won. But Golden Terror gets one of his golden terrible feet on the ropes. So Houston tries the move again, but Terror shoves him off. Houston bounces off the ropes, they bonk heads, and they both go down. Flair then springs into action, and he grabs Sam Houston, hits a suplex on the cement floor. David Crockett was... Is hysterical too strong a word?
He was...
Beside himself.
He was up in arms.
Yes. There has been an assault, an attempt to injure this brave young Sam Houston by the World Heavyweight Champion. And
Tony is screaming.
Tony's screaming.
Flair, you're the champion. Why do you need to do things like this?
So then, it may have been Pez Watley, but 3 or 4 other guys run out to make sure Flair doesn't do anything else. And Flair is completely unmoved by them. He just keeps screaming his promo saying, what just happened to Sam Houston, that is very likely to happen to Dusty Rhodes at Starrcade.
Well, it's awesome because after he gives him the suplex, Sam Houston gets counted out.
Yeah, the Golden Terror won.
The Golden Terror wins the match, and Flair is such an asshole that he has given the man a suplex behind the referee's back on the concrete floor, nearly killing the man. And then he calmly gets on commentary and starts berating the man for not being man enough to get back into the ring.
That's right.
So great. Yelling, "Where's Dusty? Where's Dusty now?" What an awesome heel.
Yes. That's what we've learned at the end of this day, everyone. Ric Flair in the 80s was a great heel.
And literally, that's how the show went off the air.
Yes,
They all of a sudden just played the graphic.
What a great show.
This show was amazing. Every Sunday night, everybody. I cannot wait for next week's show.
I already want to look at what the lineup is. Probably shouldn't.
Don't do it yet.
Yeah.
It'll be a surprise. This is correct, right? This is exactly... It's close. But
today is the 29th.
I know.
So it's technically a year and a week ago.
So we may have to skip ahead one.
May have to skip ahead one.
All right. Well, we'll alert everybody as to what we're going to watch next time. But I want to just go 30 years ago this week, since we already fucked up Nitro, and instead of doing 20 years, we're doing 19 years because we started a year early. But I didn't know if those Nitros were going to stay, so I got on them quick.
Yeah.
Or we could just watch that whole year over again, starting in January.
I don't think it's a good idea.
Anyway, everybody, let's play one last song and we'll wrap it up. What have I got?
I don't know.
This is from, is that Murdo?
I'm sorry?
I think the Ryback is pretty.
Oh, so pretty
The Ryback is pretty.
and witty and gay, and I pity any girl who's in me today.
Stupid!
Hey, short and to the point.
I guess so.
At the one and only! Woo!
It was the other one.
Oh, you idiot.
And you do not look like him anyway. All right, so this is the November 30th, 1985 edition of NWA Championship Wrestling number 4. They recap Starrcade 85, and David Crockett said, as only David Crockett can, if you missed it, you missed it.
A man of facts.
And he's right. So we got highlights, and I do use that term loosely, of Crusher Khrushchev versus Ham Houston for the
Ham Houston? That is your new gimmick.
Ham Houston.
Ham Houston, Texas babyface.
Went.
Get you a cowboy hat. Come on.
So-
Use the Baconator as a finish.
Do you think if I was working as Ham Houston, I would have a more exciting match than the highlights we saw here?
That's a damn good question. You
What a-
would not get the reaction that
No.
Sam Houston got.
No, I would not. A lot of head scissors, a lot of headlocks. The most exciting thing by far was the referee who was
Sonny Fargo.
it?
Rough House Fargo.
In
Who
this
was.
In this match in 1985, he was dressed like it was 1975. Head to toe in lemon yellow, giant flared collar, huge bell bottoms.
Yeah, he looked awesome.
He stood out.
He was great.
He did not fit in the back, sink in the background.
And he was taking bumps like a wild man.
Sure.
2 bumps in this match.
So Khrushchev had a big flapjack and cut him off for a while, and Houston cut him off and hit some
Oh, wait, that's
punches.
another match. Sorry, there were no ref bumps.
Finally, Houston hits the Bulldog, but Khrushchev gets a foot on the ropes. Houston celebrates, but when he turns around, Khrushchev drills him with a Russian sickle and pins him.
You're missing a key detail in this awesome match. Houston thought he won, as noted, but Crusher had his foot on the ropes.
Mm-hmm.
So Crusher then hits his Russian sickle, and when he made the pin, Houston's foot was on the ropes.
I did miss that.
But the ref didn't see it.
Ah.
And Khrushchev, just as he's getting the pin, he just calmly yanks the foot off the ropes again.
Well, he was so smooth, I missed it.
That's right. And he won the championship. They fucked Sonny Fargo, actually. Rough House Fargo fucked poor Sam Houston out of the Mid-Atlantic title. Man. My wife was so baffled that there was such a thing as the Mid-Atlantic title.
That's right.
They should bring that back, she said.
Yeah. The best wrestler in like the Carolinas and Virginia.
Yeah. Hey, I was the best wrestler in Texas and Arkansas.
That's true. He got me there.
Yeah.
Terry Taylor versus Buddy Landell for the national title.
This was where Rough House Fargo took his bump. A couple of things about this match. First off, as I'm sure everybody is well aware, Buddy Landell just died in June.
Yeah.
He got in a car wreck, and apparently he checked himself out of the hospital. Don't do that. And then he didn't wake up the next day. This guy had a lot of problems. We're about to see one on this show because it is within 1 month that he no-shows TV. And Dusty called him, and he told him something like, "Don't fucking ever call me." He had a bunch of coke and Valium, passed out and didn't make it. And they fired him, stripped him of the national title. And he always claimed that was a show where they were going to set up his feud with Ric Flair, where he was going to win the NWA title. Which does not make a lot of sense in hindsight, but that's what he said.
You never know.
Maybe they told him that. But anyway, so
It is amazing to watch Landell here.
he's Ric Flair.
Yes.
I was thinking about this. Imagine if there was a guy, let's just say, I can't think, who looks like John Cena?
Well, Darren Young.
Darren Young.
Yeah.
Let's just say that Darren Young, like, totally ripped off everything about Cena. He wore a different colored jersey at every event, and he even had Doctor of Thugonomics on his back.
Yeah.
And they didn't play it up as an ironic character.
No one mentioned this.
But they played it up like that's just who he was.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing.
My analogy was, imagine they found another Irishman, put him in a red mohawk, had him shout fella, but never pointed out he was similar to their champion.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just a guy doing the same gimmick. And we'll have to get into this more, but...
I mean, look at like fake Razor and fake Diesel in
yes,
WWF.
This was not that.
No.
This was not fake Sting.
No.
This was not...
he was just a guy who is exactly like another guy who is wrestling in the same promotion.
And their paths never crossed. It was not. It was
they had
not
one match, but not here.
It was not Mini Abismo Negro. It was not supposed to be a tribute either.
No.
He was just a clone.
It's just a weird clone.
Just with an alternate career path.
He did everything exactly like Flair.
Yeah.
The hair, the robe, the mannerisms, the manager. He worked like him. He locked up like him. He took bumps like him.
Yes.
The one I really noticed was when the dude picks him up to put him on the top rope for the superplex. He did it exactly like Flair. There's a way that Flair did it where when you go into the guy to lift him up, he splays his whole body out as you go to put him on the top rope. It's exactly what Landell did. I mean, everything he did was exactly like Flair.
So they went
crazy.
to commercial break early, and when they came back, it looked like we had missed a good 5 or 10 minutes. Taylor makes a comeback, including standing on Landell's face. Here was where the ref started taking his bumps, because they took turns pushing each other into the referee, and he went down over and over and over again. And I guess if it was Roughhouse Fargo, they had to bump the hell out of him to make sure he was down long enough. So Dillon goes to whack Taylor with his shoe, J.J. Dillon that would be, and Taylor reverses it. The heels bump into each other. Another massive crowd reaction. Taylor tries a superplex, but Dillon trips him. Landell lands on top, and the referee counts 3 for the win. Now, the crowd heat for this was great. The match itself, if you take the heat away, this would have fit right in on 2015 Raw. I do not mean that as praise in any way.
No, it was okay.
Mm-hmm. Back to the studio. Italian Stallion and Rocky King versus the Midnight Express. One of the great tragedies of copyright law is that the Midnight Express's theme has been edited out for these shows. That is sad.
Fargo lived a long time, by the way.
Yes, he did.
2008, I think he passed away. Mm-hmm. And he looked 100 years old in this match.
Yes. His outfit was 300 years old.
It was crazy.
So, of course, Cornette was on commentary. He had some great lines, including, my men are going to do some moves you guys won't know the names of. And all I can think is, that's the exact same thing you said to Vince McMahon 10 years later. And I would say to him today.
Yep.
And he added that there were 87,000 million people watching.
I think it's one of those things where he was going to say there were 87,000 people watching, like that was a huge number. But then he realized he was on national cable television.
More than that.
And he was like, shit, that's too low. So he added 1 million.
Yeah. It just kept on going. He openly campaigned for votes for the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Awards.
That's right.
Demanded they win both Manager and Tag Team of the Year.
I got a better one. During the middle of this match, in the middle of a wrestling match, all of a sudden, Tony Schiavone plugged the name of a couple that had been married for 50 years. And he says, we always give shout-outs to those of you that have been married for 50 years. Here's the address. And they gave the postal address.
Yeah.
So to commemorate this show, I hereby announce that every Sunday, I will give shout-outs to any listeners who have been married for 50 or more years. Now, you need to send me a copy of your marriage license, and you need to mail it to me. Post Office Box 426, this is old school, Vinny. Post Office Box 426, Woodinville, Washington, 98072. If you mail me a copy of your marriage license proving that you've been married for more than 50 years, I too will give you a shout out here on this program. It's the kind of man I am. That's also, by the way, the address for presents. Note my tree.
You do have a tree.
It looks very much like the tree in a Charlie Brown Christmas. Doesn't matter. That's my tree. And we have gifts underneath.
That's right.
More to come.
'Tis the season.
That's right.
So this match was fine. It was much more competitive than you would think. Basically, just had a regular tag match. And after several minutes of back and forth action, Eaton hit a big knee drop, and Condrey hit a brainbuster, and they pinned him.
I noticed that the Midnight Express were a good team.
It's true.
Yeah.
That is some cutting-edge analysis.
They weren't bad.
But I have no evidence to dispute your claim.
No.
So I'll move on. Yeah, they were awesome, everyone. I know that's breaking
Let's
news.
move on to the greatest man in the world. Billy Jack.
Yeah. Billy Jack Haynes got a promo.
Let me read some of my notes here about what this man said. He said, and this is virtually a word-for-word quote, "I'm doggone proud to be an American." He said hi to everyone in Oregon, which he does on every promo.
That's right.
Which is never not funny. Hey, everybody in Oregon. He says hello to his daddy.
Blows him a kiss.
Blows him a kiss. And then he says he wants the Barbarian. He notes he's in the best shape of his life, which, by the way, he said for 2 weeks now. He then adds, not trying to brag, I just want to go all the way to the top. And then when he's done, he turns to Tony Schiavone, he extends his hand, he shakes,
That's right.
and off he goes.
He says, thank you very much, Tony.
It's so...
He's the best babyface I've ever seen.
You know what? He's not even very good.
No.
But he's absolutely unique. No one's scripting a fucking promo for this goofball. This is his idea of a babyface promo. Hi, everybody in Oregon. I want to make sure I send a shout out to my daddy. Love you, daddy. It's crazy. And it's amazing.
I'll call out all the other big men in the company. He called out the Russians, the Road Warriors, and the Barbarian. And he said, I'm in the best shape of my life. I don't want to brag. Does that every week, too.
I don't want to brag.
And he wants to go straight to the top. And he thanks the fans for their support.
Yeah.
I had no idea Billy Jack Haynes was so great.
Well, you know, if we would have watched this a decade ago, he wouldn't have been great. But after a decade of these god-awful fucking promos on Raw, this man blows my mind.
That's right.
Billy Jack Haynes saying hello to people in Oregon.
Johnny Weaver interviewed Dylan and Landell after their championship win over Taylor from the Starrcade show.
God damn this guy's head. Johnny Weaver?
Oh, yes.
Oh.
I think talking about later. But yeah, there was a lot of bleeding done back in the old days. So Dylan talks about how he had beaten Ron Bass earlier in the show. He declared himself the king of the bull rope match. He proclaimed that Landell was now the national champion. He would be the national champion until the day he won the world title.
Yeah, about this Johnny Weaver fella. Have you ever noticed when we watch these NWA shows and even like a lot of the WCW and Nitro stuff, maybe not so much Nitro was starting to go away, but these old guys were legendary.
Yes.
They were greatly respected.
Yes.
Now they're old, goofy shitheads. If you watch WWF or WWE, if you're old, you are so out of touch, and you're a geek, and they'll put you in a comedy skit inevitably, and it's crazy. What went wrong with this business?
Vince
has no respect. It's crazy. Of all people that should have respect for older wrestlers,
Yeah.
you'd think it would be him.
You would think.
God, it's crazy.
Everything he ever has, he has owed to these wrestlers. But no, that's not important to him.
If they brought Jimmy Hart or Gene Okerlund back, like, would they ever let just Gene Okerlund go backstage and interview guys and talk about what a legend Gene was? And, oh my God, we've got Gene Okerlund here. He's going to be interviewing all of the stars tonight. No, Gene Okerlund would do a dance, or he would sing, or he would do something ridiculous. He'd get pantsed, something stupid. Sickening. It's disrespect.
So back to this Landell promo. He outright says, and I'm not making this up, for those of you who think we're exaggerating his Ric Flair ripping offness, he outright says, I have been watching Ric Flair, Tully Blanchard, and the Andersons, and I have modeled myself after them.
One of them.
Yeah, but
I don't see a lot of Arn in this man.
nor Tully. Certainly not Ole. Yeah, he is not shy about this fact. So then we go back to the studio for Raging Bull versus Tommy Lane.
I got to talk about this. The bad news.
Everything.
No, you're wrong. 99% was bad. Then we had the 1% that was great. They had
Don't
hideously,
say the finish.
Yes, yeah. Fuck, Vinny. Come on. This was the best thing on the show. They do this horribly, hideously boring match. And finally, at the end, Tommy Lane whips him into the ropes, and Tommy Lane is going to punch him in the stomach, I think.
Or something. He stuck his arm out. Manny
Fernandez, the Raging Bull, his counter is to leap high in the air and do a flip and land on his fucking ass. But then he jumps to his feet quickly and does a running high cross, knocks the man down, and falls on him at the same time for the pin. I've never seen that counter
No, you have not.
in my life.
There's a reason no one has ever stolen this. Taking this giant flip bump looked like it would have hurt Raging Bull more than just getting punched in the stomach.
You're right. It does look that way.
Yes. Now,
And then, would you like to talk about the match or can I talk about the promo?
I want to talk about the match more.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, as the graphic said, this is not Manny Fernandez, not even the Raging Bull, just Raging Bull from the Bull family, our son Raging. This match was 5 to 10 minutes of headlocks and head scissors and complete inaction, complete silence from the crowd, which meant we, the audience, were left only with the pearls of wisdom of David Crockett saying such things as, ooh. There'd be an arm drag or a hip toss.
That is really the extent of it, too.
Yes, they would go back to the headlock. Crockett had nothing else to talk about, so he begins to discuss the deliberate nature with which Raging Bull removes his chaps. And they did the finish. Raging Bull won, and then he cut a promo.
Let me speak of this promo. First off, he said that 1986 would be the year of the rage.
Gotta try something.
Then, translate this line for me, Vinny. The past to the bull is the future, baby.
Did he actually say this?
Yes.
Are you sure that was not in the part where he was speaking Spanish?
No. He said that in English.
The past to the bull is the future, baby.
Yes.
He was high.
What does that mean?
I got no idea.
And then he spoke Spanish.
He's got this promo in 80% Spanish. And I don't mean to alarm you, but in 1985 in Atlanta, this did not get over.
It didn't get over, but you know what? It's national cable television.
That's true.
And he was speaking to his constituency.
That's true. That's true.
And they let him do it because they realized there should be someone for everybody. And Manny Fernandez is the man for these Hispanics. He's going to speak to them. He's going to be their baby face. Great. It would be cool if we were allowed to do that today.
No, that's true.
As a Hispanic man, all I've got is Alberto Del Rio, who's a heel, and the Lucha Dragons who speak English.
That's right.
Because I'm looking for that Spanish speaker.
We had a match in, I'm trying to figure out what the hell they call this, the Championship Challenge Series,
Yes.
where it is not clear what championships are on the line, nor who the challengers are. But it was the Road Warriors versus Black Bart and Thunderfoot.
Captain New Japan.
There was a man in the corner who was wearing a red costume and a red mask with random lightning bolts here and there. And it was not the Flash. Lord was not. So I saw this team and that team, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a 60-second Road Warrior squash. Awesome, awesome. How wrong I was. There were some arm wringers, there were some body slams, and suddenly they had the heat on Hawk. Broke down into a four-way, and when I say it broke down into a four-way, there were 4 men in the ring for a good 3 or 4 minutes. Black Bart and Hawk together, quite terrible.
Hawk was so green. Like, he would body slam someone, and he couldn't even wait till they hit the ground before he was rushing to try to pick them up again.
Yes.
It's like, slow down, dude. Be
Yes.
powerful.
So during the match, Ivan Koloff comes out to cut a promo with the announcers. Paul Ellering comes out to confront him. This is a trap. Nikita jumps Ellering from behind. Hawk runs out to make the save. All the Russians kill Hawk. While they're all killing Hawk, Animal wins the tag match by himself.
Yes.
It's a power slam and wins.
Animal was not going to lose this match. No matter what. 100 Russians could have been in that building. He would have won this match.
Yes.
Unlike today,
So,
where he would
unfortunately...
have been distracted.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. So Animal wins, but unfortunately for him, his manager and tag team partner have now been taken out, and they triple team him for a while. And finally, Hawk makes a save with a chair and chases the Russians away.
No. Don't forget, the Russians took out Animal with a chain to the neck.
There was that too, yes.
As a key because they take him out and he's down selling. And David Crockett says, this has never happened to the Road Warriors before. And I'm like, man, big time angle here on NWA World Championship Wrestling. Alas, 1 minute later, Animal's up helping Hawk take Paul Ellering out of the building.
Yeah.
One of them had his head, one of them had his legs, carted him out.
Jim Crockett came out, announced all matches in the Championship Challenge Series would now be no DQ, no countout, and if it went to a time limit, they would do a rest period and then restart the match.
So why have a time limit?
I don't know. He booked a 6-man tag for next week, which is so irrelevant I didn't even write it down.
Arn and Ole and Tully versus Billy Jack, Magnum, and Sam Houston, which should not be irrelevant because this is leading to the formation of the Four Horsemen.
Well, I guess that's true then.
Paul Ellering was much prettier with hair. I want to throw that in there.
He did call himself Pretty Paul Ellering, didn't he?
I didn't even recognize him at first. I'm like, who's this? Oh, Jesus, it's Paul Ellering.
Ellering had hair and
a handsome man.
And a silk karate something.
I don't know what that gi was.
Ron Garvin versus Jim Jeffers.
Oh, you talk about Jim Jeffers. He's amazing. He's fat, white, black trunks, black boots, and a big fucking mustache.
I thought he would be the third vaudevillain.
You know what he looked like? He looked like if the Beer City Bruiser ate Silas Young and took on his mustache. You got Jim Jeffers. Am I wrong?
I can't argue with you.
Put Silas Young's mustache on the Beer City Bruiser, and it's Jim Jeffers. This match.
Garvin's mullet, by the way.
Not as bad as the Raging Bull.
Garvin's mullet was just a peroxide unfrozen caveman lawyer.
Actually, it's exactly what he looked like.
Now, this match starts off, and
I can already tell you hated it more than I did.
it's not even that I hated it. I was just amazed by it. He's slapping him in the face and chest repeatedly, Garvin is. And he takes him down. He's doing shoot cradles and Stu Hart-style submission holds. And I thought this match may have been a shoot.
He almost had him in the sugar.
He did. That's what the announcer said.
Yes.
He was out here to beat up Jim Jeffers. And Jim Jeffers looked at many times like he was not aware that he was going to get beat up like this.
But you know what? He would not quit.
Oh, no.
Jim Jeffers would not quit.
He took a thrashing. He got his ass kicked here. He got his ass kicked there. This meeting was savage and unrelenting.
And then...
So Garvin, see if I remember this right. Garvin tries a sunset flip. And I almost said bruiser. Jeffers fought and fought.
He punched him.
Well, before that, he fought and fought, and he sat down on Garvin's chest and did a double bicep pose. He mocked him. And Garvin kicked out, and then Jeffers punched him. There was a punch in there. I may be getting some of this out of order. The point is, he had the gall and the temerity to fight back. And this just made Garvin more pissed.
But he got a hell of a comeback.
And he beat him more. So after all this, there's more slapping, there's more chopping, there's more kicking. His finish was a closed fist punch.
Right in front of the referee.
Right in front of the referee. He punches him, he sits in his chest, and he wins.
Why was that punch legal?
What a dick Garvin was here.
Jeffers did make a comeback.
Yes.
This is a key that you need to make sure that the audience knows. And then he went up top exactly like the fucking Beer City Bruiser. He leaped off, he crashed and burned, and then he was punched right in the face for the pin.
Yeah.
The hands of steel. Everyone else is not allowed to use a closed fist. It's just like the Big Show's finish.
It is.
Why is that closed fist legal? Someone explain this to me.
Perhaps you have a 5 count. And they stop punching before the 5 count's over. Yeah, Garvin, Dick. Road Warriors returned for a promo. They said they had no friends, but they were Americans, damn it. And World War III had started today. They ordered every promoter in the world to sign this match. Hawk started to lose his train of thought, so Animal took over. Said, Paul Ellering handles our money. Now he's laid up with a bad neck. He's hurt real bad.
I loved that Animal was mostly upset because the man who handled their money was hurt.
Yeah. What do you think the Road Warriors fight for?
That's all he is to them. He's the man who handles their money.
That's right. Then he said, and this is a quote, "We don't have any friends, but we're from this stinking country, and we hate your country, and we hate you."
They really said that.
Yes.
That was incredible.
We hate your country, and we hate you. Oh, God. Arn Anderson, who is one half of the National Tag Team Champions, comes out to talk about the TV Championship.
God, this was great.
There were a lot of belts in this territory. Do we mention that?
Yes. And you know what? I will say, everybody thought their belt was the most prestigious.
That's true.
Unless you were talking about the world title.
They were all...
The world title was above everything else.
This national title I have, it's better than that Mid-Atlantic title. It's not as good as the world title, but it's the second best belt. Everyone says something like that.
Arn said it. Magnum said it about the U.S. title. They
Yep.
all respected their belt.
That's right. So Arn, the gimmick was... they explained it here in flashbacks. Arn and Tully hate Dusty. Dusty was the TV champion. So when he was on crutches, they came out, they kicked the crutches out from under him, and they stole his TV belt. Assholes. He said he had possession of the belt. That was 99% of the law.
It's 9/10, that'd be 90%.
That's what I'm just quoting Arn. And he said he had his own highlight reel of himself making title defenses against geeks, winning with the Gourd Buster. Talked about what a great move that was.
It was so awesome. This man out here talking about how awesome his Gourd Buster finish is.
Oh, yeah.
And they just showed finish after finish in slow motion.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, hey, you want to take this, Jim? You don't want to take this.
Look at that, right on his nose.
Look at that, right on his face. And they'd shown slow motion. It was awesome.
Yes. Then they showed Arn doing a promo from another show where he was holding the TV title over his belt, looking at the camera or the interviewer, and he's saying, if you want your belt back, Rhodes, you come and get it. I'm right here. And then Rhodes comes up from behind him, waffles him in the back of the head with a plastic chair, takes his belt, and walks away.
Yeah.
It was so great.
It was great because they got a tight shot of the two guys, Arn and the guy interviewing him. And was it Weaver?
No, I can't remember the guy's name now.
It doesn't matter. But anyway, all of a sudden, you know Dusty's coming because they start to pan out and people start screaming.
It was Bob Caudle.
Bob Caudle. And everybody notices except Arn.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, Dusty is behind him, and he's got this big fucking chair, and he dumps it right over the guy's head, and Arn goes flying. It's a plastic chair.
Yes.
It was an easy shot, but it was still ridiculous. It was pratfall comedy.
Yes.
And then he reaches down, picks up his belt, and he walks away like the Patterson Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Just lumbers away, looks once over his shoulder, and then keeps walking.
Indifferent to him. So Arn says, this was a cowardly attack from behind, something I'd never done in my life. I'm always man enough to look you in the eye.
I'll look you in the eye when I kick your leg out of your leg.
That's right. So they go to commercial. They come back. They show the chair attack again. And on second viewing, it was actually much better.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a few details that we have not discussed yet. As noted, it's a very, very tight shot. And Arn's running his mouth, and you hear the crowd cheering. And then I would like to think they did this on purpose, but I suspect, given the production values of the time, it was just a very, very happy accident. But before you see Dusty, and before you see Dusty's chair, you see Dusty's shadow welding the shadow of the chair.
They didn't need no production. He was big.
And the shadow comes in, and then suddenly Dusty's there, and he brings the chair down. And as noted, it's a plastic chair. It hits the back of Arn's head and then bounces up.
Oh, yeah.
And the chair goes flying. Arn goes down. Dusty takes his belt. And Dusty's expression was so blank and so casual about all this.
You know, the last season of Tough Enough, they had ZZ, who was fat. That was his gimmick. And, like, he couldn't do any of the things they wanted. He didn't have a good body, but he could talk. And so everybody compared him to Dusty. Like, if Dusty came along now, he'd be ZZ. And he'd have no hope in this business. Because they'd just make him do all these drills, and they'd make him get eliminated, and they'd run him off. ZZ is now the Performance Center, because he came in second, and everybody loved him. And they always have these shots of him in street clothes, where he's wearing like a button-up shirt and trousers. Fucking spitting image for Dusty Rhodes. And let me tell you something. We're going to get to it in a minute, but they've got Dusty versus Tolina cage. You can't tell me that with a year of training, ZZ couldn't have this match in this cage with Tully Blanchard, because Dusty was fucking horrible in that match.
Yeah. So, yeah, they aired Magnum TA's post-match promo from Starrcade. We talked about how the match was so violent it shouldn't have even been a wrestling match. But the point was he had his U.S. title. It was back where it belonged. Then Jim Crockett reappears. Says, we're going to crown a new TV champion. So I guess Dusty was stripped of it after all. He announces it'll be a one-night tournament on this show on January and blah, blah, blah. And the last thing the show ended with was...
God, think about that. We're watching 19 years ago in WCW and 30 years ago in WCW. And on both shows, the TV title is vacant.
That's right.
Crazy.
That is right. And they showed clips of Dusty winning the title from Blanchard at Bash 85, a steel cage match in a stadium show.
Was this not hideous?
It wasn't good.
Oh.
Most of it, they were doing nothing. And
nothing.
When they were doing something, they were on totally different pages.
Dusty was in absolute dead slow motion. Like, I've never seen a man move so slow in so high profile a match. He didn't do a thing. And finally, after not doing a thing forever, they didn't have any drama or anything. He just all of a sudden grabs the guy and pile drives him and wins.
It's actually I guess it's even worse than that. They did a ref bump, but then Dusty does pile driver and the ref got better.
Yeah.
There was nothing the ref missed. Yeah, I like the part where Dusty, they were fighting on top of the cage or standing on the top rope and fighting, and Tully takes the big bump off. And Dusty goes for a big elbow, and Tully clearly has no idea if he is supposed to take this elbow or dodge.
Oh, God.
And he finally decided, fuck this, I'm getting out of the way. Yeah, this is poor.
And this was one of those matches. Sometimes we watch these matches from this era, and even some of the stuff we watched in the mid-'90s. Crowds going crazy the entire match. Not this one.
No.
They were maybe buzzing, but they certainly weren't making a lot of noise until he won, and then they went batshit crazy. And the funniest thing is, in the match itself, he was moving so little that I thought, okay, he's either hurt or he's totally blown up, because there's no other explanation for the glacial speed of Dusty Rhodes in this match. Finally, he wins, and the next thing you know, he's running. He's literally jumping up and down in joy.
Yeah.
He moved so much more after he won than when he was actually in the match itself. Dusty's celebrating. There's people screaming. He's got his belt. He's the champion. They're all going crazy. They cut to the credits, and all of a sudden, the first thing you see is producer Virgil Runnels.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, God. If we were covering this live in 85, we'd be bitching so bad right now.
Absolutely.
Oh, that was the show.
That was that. Yeah, the our promo and that whole segment was great. Our Raging Bull match fucking sucked. Nothing else was pretty boring, really.
I still had fun watching it.
It was better than Raw.
It was better than Raw.
Yeah.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
All right, let's not waste any time. This show.
December 21st, 1985 edition of NWA Championship Wrestling. The best thing, legit, was the opening video, which was just Dusty Rhodes and Magnum TA hitting stereo belly-to-bellies in super slow-mo. It was all
Which I don't even know what the point of it was.
all downhill from there. They announced the Bunkhouse Stampede would be starting soon. Also, the TV title was vacant. Therefore, to crown it, there would be a 10-man tournament. Not 8.
10.
Not 16. 10. Ole Anderson versus Bob Wayne. Yes, Bob Wayne, who had lightning bolts in his trunks because apparently he's capable of great speed that was never on display here. Teddy Long was the match or referee for every match in the show. And when you think about it, Teddy Long had a longer career in wrestling than almost everyone. He was around forever.
Yeah.
Ole was great at squash matches because all he did was stomps and punches, but his stomps and punches were all very believable. It's quite possible he was just stomping and punching Bob Wayne as hard as he could every time, but regardless, it was fun to watch. And he hit a knee strike off the top rope and then he worked his arm over for like 3 or 4 minutes and then just put him in an arm bar, like the exact same arm bar you would see in every other pro wrestling match ever, only he had worked over the arm first and this was a jobber, and so he submitted. That was awesome.
Let's talk for a moment about one of my favorite things in all of professional wrestling, and that is gear. Do you remember, Vinny, when you had to get gear? Of course you don't. You never had real gear.
I was going to say.
What happened was we took you to Tacoma Discount World, and we found a gold velour jumpsuit, and we made you wear it.
Close to the truth, yes.
That's the history of your gear.
Yeah.
I'll tell you about my gear. There's a place called Stagecoach Boots, and what you would do is you would call them, and you would say, I want black patent leather boots. Here is a drawing of my foot so you can make sure that it fits. I want it to be exactly 12 inches tall, and I wanted to have wingtips or whatever the hell you call them on the back of it. You designed it, right?
Right.
Okay. So, Ole Anderson Old, bitter, angry Ole Anderson called some man on the phone, and he said, "Can I get some red trunks? And make sure you put 5 stars on them." That was a request, because that's what he wore. Red trunks with 5 white stars. Why?
Because he was a star.
I would read a book if somebody went back and interviewed all of the wrestlers about what they were thinking when they ordered their gear. This other fella, Bob Wayne. Bob Wayne decided, I want some trunks and I want 2 lightning bolts on them. Why? I don't know.
I don't have an answer.
Lightning bolts. I saw no lightning here in this match.
Oh.
I saw Ole yank his arm for 5 minutes, and then he yanked it again, and the guy quit.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I'm not exaggerating.
No.
That is exactly what happened. It was just 1 yank too many.
He reached his yank limit.
Yeah. Ole achieved his yank goal.
He did.
Should be on my thing right here.
Yanks?
Yeah. How many yanks did I have during the day? Not enough.
Clearly. Explain your bad mood.
Either did Ric Flair.
Tony Schiavone interviewed Paul Jones and the Barbarian.
I'm in a great mood,
He interviewed Paul Jones.
considering what I watched.
Jones said he'd been trying to get champions to face the Barbarian, but
The fact that I'm alive means I'm in a great mood after that show.
he had been trying to get champions to face the Barbarian, but they always had something else to do. That is a quote.
Your main man, Paul Jones, really brought it today.
I had no problem with him today.
Oh, yeah?
No, I had no problem with him on the show.
Oh.
He ran in a raid for a while about how this is Barbarian's chance was going to win the title, and he was going to win.
I wrote, this was a great, horrible promo.
That's fair. Someone in the thread of the last show said Vinny versus Bo Dallas has surpassed Vinny versus Paul Jones as the top feud.
That's true.
Yeah, Paul Jones is retired. I won. Now I need to get Bo Dallas out.
Wow.
Nikita Koloff versus Tony Zane. Here's a sentence I wrote in its entirety. Tony Zane was a shitty fat guy wrestler.
Wow.
Yeah, he was terrible.
He was horrible and pale. Nikita was very bad in this match. He beat him up and clotheslined him for the
clobbered
pin.
It wasn't bad. He was limited.
Highlight of this was Koloff is there with Ivan. And you know how guys give each other advice before the match? Mm-hmm. Ivan, before the match, goes up to Nikita and he looks at him and he puts his 2 thumbs together in fists and he makes a breaking motion.
That's right.
And then he got out of the ring.
That was his advice.
That was his fucking advice. Break the man.
Break him.
In half. And he did.
Yes, he did. And he won with the clothesline. Shivani interviewed America's team, which was Magnum TA and Dusty Rhodes. They may have both been asleep.
I know that people like to think that I never watched any wrestling. Believe me, I've seen plenty of Magnum TA, but honest to God, this is the first time I ever noticed his head. Was it worse than ever today, or is it just me?
It was very, very red and very, very, very scarred.
Oh, my God.
This man shed much blood for the sport. So all they really had to say was that Magnum was being U.S. champ and Dusty was going to be TV champ, and that was it. This is not the best promo I ever saw.
No, they may have been asleep. Maybe they watched the show, and then this was put in later.
That's possible. Barbarian versus Richard Dunn.
Or as I wrote, Dick Dunn.
To amuse yourself?
Yeah, I had to do something.
It's the 3rd straight heel squash match, and one thing I noted, and it continued in every match here, whenever a heel was wrestling a squash match and he had a manager or a valet or just a second on the floor, he would always throw the victim out on the floor and take the ref just to tease the idea that there might be interference.
Yes.
So always have the fans watching out for it.
Yeah.
Even if the guy never really threatened it. There was always a potential threat.
And Paul Jones always threatened to threaten the man.
Yes.
But never actually did.
Right.
He would get kind of close, but then back away.
So Teddy Long, as noted, was the referee and shouting instructions at everyone. And it sounded, of course, just like Teddy Long. And I kept expecting him to book a tag team match. We'd mentioned last week, or whenever we talked about it, that Buddy Landell was a blatant Ric Flair ripoff in the same promotion as Ric Flair. Here's the Barbarian working in the same promotion as the Road Warriors.
Yeah.
I'm stunned they didn't just make him the third warrior and do the feud of the Kohos.
Dude, the Barbarian was so great.
Yeah.
He was great everywhere. He was great in this match. He did a lot of grunting. He beat the man up. This Dick Dunn.
He was terrible.
He couldn't bump.
No.
He could not run the ropes.
No.
I'm not even making that up. He would run, and he'd put his back on the ropes, and both of his arms would be down.
I think there was actually somebody worse at this later in the show.
I don't know.
Because this, granted, his arms were way out of position, but I believe he was at least running. There was a guy who walked the ropes later.
Can't do a damn thing is what I wrote.
I wrote, terrible wrestler, couldn't run the ropes, would fall down at random moments.
That's what happened.
Barbarian won with a power slam and a diving headbutt.
I wrote, Barbarian hits him with 1,000 moves and wins.
That's also true.
This match went forever, it seemed.
Oh, there was much worse to come.
I wish Dave were here so I could say, this match went 5 hours. He would go, it was only 2 minutes. It may have been. It felt like 5 hours. That's the point.
You turned on this show much sooner than I did, but I did reach my breaking point. Shivani interviewed Tully Blanchard and Baby Doll. This was amazing. Tully is cutting a very good promo. He explains that in wrestling, you must be a champion if you want to make money. That's why we're all here. And now Magnum's got his belt. He's not a champion anymore. So to motivate himself, he's wearing the sweatshirt of Magnum TA's gym. So every time he looks in the mirror, he reminds himself, I got to beat Magnum and get my belt back. Then he mentions the TV title tournament. Says, I was a TV champion. I was the longest reigning TV champion of all time. I'm going to win that belt too. He's going off about all his goals. And Baby Doll says, and this is almost an exact quote. In fact, by the end it is, Tully, you have to win the TV or U.S. titles because, and this is the quote, I'm very expensive.
Yeah.
She flat out said, at best she's a gold digger. Or she's a prostitute.
Yeah.
Or both.
And he said, you take care of me, and I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
That's right.
This was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Can you imagine trying that line on Raw in 2015?
I don't think that would go over very well.
Can you imagine if John Cena and Nikki Bella had this exact same conversation backstage at Raw?
Well, actually, I can.
Oh, Vinny, please.
Crusher Khrushchev versus Bill Mulkey.
Oh,
Bill Mulkey. The legendary Mulkey brothers. I love this, by the way.
Fucking Mulkey took the funniest and most horrible bump of all time for
shoulder
a tackle.
Where he threw up both his arms and then just turned around and dropped to his face.
I know the Mulkeys are like cult favorites, but this Mulkey sucked.
The amazing thing about this is you got two Mulkeys. And you got one of them in a tag match later, but you broke them up. You didn't have the Mulkeys as a tag team. You had them in single, one in singles, one in a tag.
There had to be 80 Mulkeys.
So I looked at
There
Bill
were
Mulkey.
Mulkeys everywhere.
I wrestled.
Yeah.
And to wrestle, I had to see a doctor who approved that I was not, proved I was healthy enough to compete. I had no heart trouble or anything like that. What doctor cleared Bill Mulkey to wrestle? He did not look well.
No.
And I don't mean that as code for any WWE performance enhancing testing. He looked unhealthy. He looked sickly and weak. The highlight of this was before they even locked up, the bell rings and a fan screams, "Ask him, ref."
He should have, and he should have just said yes.
Yes, I just quit. So yes, he didn't have any idea how to do anything, including take shoulder tackles. All the Russians had the same finish. It was the clothesline. And you should have seen Khrushchev hit this clothesline because it looked like he legit hooked his head and threw him down by the head and then pinned him. And here I wrote, this show is tremendous. I was a fool.
You know, in 2010, Bleacher Report had an article called Why the Mulkey Brothers Are the Greatest Jobbers of All Time. There's no way whoever wrote this saw the match that I just saw here tonight.
There's more.
Yeah, a lot more.
There's a lot more on the show. Shivani interviewed J.J. Dillon, who said none of the announcers tonight were giving Buddy Landel enough credit for beating Terry Taylor to win the national title. So the next match was Tully Blanchard versus Vernon Deaton.
Before we get to that, J.J. Dillon, when he did this promo, this was when it first struck me like a ton of bricks. And I'll talk more about this later. J.J. Dillon was fucking awesome. The gap between the talented and the untalented on this program was astonishing, as we will get to later.
Well, speaking of untalented, let's talk about David Crockett.
We got to get it's Tully Blanchard and Vernon Deaton.
It's during this match. They're talking about the J.J. Dillon promo. So the TV title tournament's coming up, and they say, there's only 10 men to get in there. Buddy Landell may not be good enough.
Oh.
They buried Landell.
Yeah,
They
he's
buried
gone.
Taylor, and they buried the national belt. And if Landell's gone, that doesn't make sense. Vernon Deaton. I think it was a Joel Deaton too, but this is Vernon Deaton. He was very, very bad at wrestling. Like all the jobbers in the show. He was so useless that the only way to get him to take a move was to shoot on him.
There was a shoot headlock takeover in the opening minutes of this match.
Until he grabbed him by the head, and Vernon Deaton didn't go over until he grabbed him tight and threw him over.
Yeah. He was going to make sure he got this. My favorite part of this match was when Tully slammed him to the mat and proceeded to drop approximately 20 elbows in succession on the man.
Yes.
He dropped elbow after elbow after elbow after elbow. This is not like Dolph Ziggler. Dolph usually stops at 5. Tully didn't jump.
That's the other thing.
He stood up.
Dolph does it, and he builds up to a crescendo and does a wacky ass wiggle and jump.
No.
Tully just dropped elbows.
He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow. He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow. He stood up, he fell on him with his elbow 20 times.
And I could just see what was going on in Tully's mind. He said, this guy sucks. And you tell him, just lie there.
Yeah.
And I will drop elbows on you.
And then at the end, his finish is a slingshot suplex. Which, when he executed it in one, I thought, those 20 elbows were a lot worse to me.
Oh, as far as taking a beating?
Yeah!
Yeah, the slingshot suplex is a weird move. If you put any thought into it at all, why does that hurt more than a regular suplex?
Well, you got the extra momentum from the ropes.
Huh.
But still, it's not as bad as dropping 20 elbows on a man.
No. The other thing I noticed here, and again, Tully threw the guy outside just so Baby Doll had the opportunity to cheat if she wanted to. The size of these television cameras.
Yeah.
Like rhinoceroses outside a ringside. Just massive. Shivani interviewed Arn Anderson, who addressed a couple of timid fellows called the Rock and Roll Express.
God, he blew away all these geeks on this show.
Yeah. He credited the Rock and Rolls for their teamwork and speed, said they'd never beaten the Andersons. And said he would be the TV champion because he'd be a champion people could depend on to have a great match. It was a great promo by Arn. And here.
This was where I snapped.
This is the moment where I realized I was wrong. This is a terrible show.
Sam Houston and Kent Glover. Kent Glover. Vinny, I realize for the last decade, we've been making fun of your wrestling ability.
Yes.
You would have been a god in Mid-Atlantic. These fucking jobbers. The thing that really struck me was, it appears to me that if you had talent in the 80s, you had approximately a 99% chance of making a name for yourself somewhere. Maybe anywhere. Nowadays, you can have a shit ton of talent, and there's a 99% chance you'll be a geek. What has happened to this business? Everybody on this show who had any modicum of talent was a star.
Yeah.
And everyone else was a jobber. It took this much talent to break out of the pack.
His finger's very close to his thumb.
Yeah.
People.
And you could apparently get a job anywhere in this country.
Yeah.
All
yes.
of these territories.
Yes.
Go to Oregon. Go to Florida. Go wherever the fuck you want. If you had any talent. Now you got all these guys with talent, and they're all mid-card geeks.
When you are trained to wrestle.
You hate Bo Dallas. Bo Dallas on this show.
Oh my God, Bo Dallas is better than... Bo Dallas, actually, you know what? I'll get back to Bo in a second.
He'd have been champ.
When you are trained to wrestle, one of the moves they teach you to take, of course, is the back body drop. Because it's a very basic move that gets a big reaction, and if you know what you're doing, it's actually very safe. If you don't know what you're doing, like me, it scares the hell out of you. And so when you're taking it, you're afraid of landing on your head, so you always over-rotate and land on your ass.
That's no good.
I did this 1,000 times in training until I figured out and I learned how to take a backdrop and land on my back and not die, and then it was fine. I bring this up because Kent Glover did, in fact, hear on national television, take a backdrop, and you can tell he was terrified, and he over-rotated, and he landed on his ass.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, I think Kent Glover may have been the superior worker. Sam Houston sucked. Sam Houston was Bo Dallas with a better physique. So Sam would keep hitting him in holds, and Kent Glover would keep going to the ropes. And a fan yelled at Glover to start wrestling and quit playing the ropes.
Somebody before this match backstage said, Sam, go out there with Kent Glover and give me 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm. Houston yelled at Glover to stay in the ring and wrestle. Rope breaks severely frowned upon in the Mid-Atlantic territory. So Houston worked the arm for several hours. He was losing a test of strength to Kent Glover.
Go look at him.
Until he was skinny. He kicked his way free and hit another arm drag. And finally, he won with a bulldog. What an awful match, I wrote.
Then there was a Flair promo.
Yeah.
And I was amazed because at first I listened to Ric Flair, who they trotted out at least 3 times and maybe 4 on this show, just to bring some life to it. And I thought, you know what? Flair really was like a god among all these geeks. And then I started to think, how much was he actually a god of pro wrestling? And how much of it was just a contrast from guys like fucking Kent Glover? Was he really that good, or were they that bad? The answer, of course, is he was really that good.
And they were that bad.
And they were that bad. Oh, my God, the contrast here.
First of all, Flair comes out, and he's being Ric Flair, talking about the best-looking guy and the best-dressed guy and every woman's fantasy. And he has, of course, always said this, always bragged about his prowess with the women. But they kept cutting the crowd shots. And of these women, Ric Flair was the hottest man on earth.
Not just that.
The women in the studio, they would have all thrown themselves at his feet.
There was a third interview that he did later, and he's giving out all of his information to the women. And you know, on Raw, actually, they don't do this on Raw anymore, but everyone remembers wrestling where there'd be like the good-looking guy in the ring, and they'd cut to the girl swooning in the crowd or whatever. Mm-hmm. They cut to this girl. There's no way she was 13. No way she was older than 12. I was like, really? That's what you cut to, director, when Ric Flair, who's 40, is out there doing this fucking promo?
Yeah. So he's talking about defending the title against Dusty Rhodes on Christmas Day. That's something to think about.
Hey, that used to be a huge day for
yes.
wrestling.
That and Thanksgiving. So then on the theme of Christmas, he explains he is no Scrooge. And he takes out a big fat wad of cash. Says, Tony Schiavone, here's $300. Take your wife out for a nice dinner. And Tony takes the money and pockets it. Flair holds up $200 bills, says, Magnum TA, here's $200. Go get yourself some nice clothes. This should be a lot better than what you're wearing now. Then he holds up $500 and says, Dusty Rhodes, this is for you to get a first-class ticket out of Atlanta so you can escape this beating I'm going to give you.
God, he's great.
What a brilliant fucking promo this was. This was awesome. All right, so they have been doing the Championship Challenge Series, whatever the hell they call it. But the idea is this is the point of the show, everyone, where we're going to stop the promos and squash matches and do something competitive. This is what we got.
This fucking match.
Ron Garvin and Raging Bull versus Thunderfoot and Black Bart.
Oh, it went forever. It went 100 years. That's what I wrote in my notes, and I don't lie.
Fernandez, talking about guys with scarred foreheads, Fernandez was bleeding a minute in from nothing.
Nothing.
A wind came by and blew his forehead open.
Air busting him open. All I know is somehow, and I don't even know how, because it's rather plain, the Raging Bull has a worse hairdo than Enzo Amore. I don't know how he achieved this 30 years ago.
So they get the heat on Garvin for a while. Yes, Thunderfoot and Black Bart beating up Ron Garvin. Garvin makes a hot tag, and Raging Bull comes in, and this leads to not a comeback, But Thunderfoot tags out, and Bart and Bull walk up.
They start over.
The match over.
They started over. Vinny. They started
I know we've gone 10 minutes,
over.
kids, but we're going 10 more. Teddy Long shouting out instructions like, get him out of the corner, Foot.
Get him out of the court. Let me talk about Foot. Let me talk about the finish of this match, which you're not going to believe when I tell you.
I don't know how to describe it.
I can. Man's name is Thunder Foot. He's dressed like Captain New Japan. I don't have any idea why. We finally figured out why he's called Thunder Foot. It's because he loads the boot.
Yes.
Now, I'm sure you youngsters are thinking, what does that mean, he loads the boot? Well, you see, the referee, I can't believe I'm explaining this. The referee is supposed to check your boot before the match begins. He checks your right boot, he checks your left boot. He checks, like, the toe of your boot, I guess, to make sure there's no metal in there. So, you gimmick your boot by putting a metal plate in the back of your boot. And when you're ready for the finish, you tap your foot on the mat, and the metal plate slides to the front of your boot, and then you kick the guy with the loaded part of the boot, and you kill him. I know this because I was hit with the grappler's loaded boot and pinned in the first match of the new Portland Wrestling back in 2000. Anyway, Thunderfoot gets a tag, and he walks over, and
That's generous, but go ahead.
dramatically begins to load his boot. He starts jamming his toe into the mat to let you, the viewer, know my boot is loaded. And if I hit anyone with this boot, they will surely die. He loads the boot. Manny Fernandez is right there. Thunderfoot drives the loaded boot into the guts and ribs of Manny Fernandez. And Manny Fernandez doesn't sell it. Because apparently Manny Fernandez was unaware he had loaded the boot. So, because he didn't sell it, Thunderfoot hits him again. Manny Fernandez doesn't sell it again, and then immediately there is a sunset flip off the top rope, and the match is over. 10 minutes I waited for that fucked up spot and that finish. When he didn't sell the loaded boot, I was like, this has to be a rib. You made me watch this match for 10 fucking minutes, and then he doesn't sell the loaded boot at the end.
It's actually worse than all this.
That's impossible.
Because when you say Thunderfoot tagged in, that's not what happened. Black Bart went to a neutral corner. Thunderfoot followed him to this neutral corner, then entered the ring, and Black Bart got out, and Teddy was confused and went with Bart. You're also overlooking the fact anyone who complains about WWE guys working into the hard camera too much, you should all be forced to watch Black Bart do a long chin lock spot with his back to the camera.
All you could see
Like
was
a minute, all you saw was Black
giant
Bart's
ass.
back. Yeah, I went -2 stars on that.
God.
I think it was too nice.
I think.
Yeah, it was very terrible. This is shitty pro wrestling, y'all. Jim Crockett came out to announce Magnum versus Ole for next week. Flair interrupted.
Can you imagine watching the show the next week after this one? If I had watched this show as the first wrestling show I ever watched, I don't know what I'd be doing right now.
I don't even know what to say anymore. So Flair interrupts, congratulates him for booking such great matches. Liar! Ric Flair lied to us all. Said it was too bad he couldn't find an opponent worthy of Flair. Garvin was out there.
This led to the greatest moment on the show.
To a moment, that's for sure. So Garvin's out there. He just had a match. Flair says, look, buddy, this is my interview time. I'm the champion. When I walk out here, it becomes my interview time. You need to get out of here. Garvin says, Flair, you're running from everybody. You're running from me. You're running from Dusty. You're running from Magnum. He challenged him to a match. Flair laughed him off. Garvin says, I dare you to put your belt where your mouth is. I know you can't put your money where your mouth is because I know you already spent it all. And Ric Flair took the idea that he may spend all of his money. That is the worst insult you can say.
How ironic.
He was so pissed at this concept that he may run out of money. Bullshit. That pissed him off. Then Garvin walked away. That pissed him off more. So Flair accepts the challenge. He says, we're going to wrestle next week. And Garvin comes back and says, all right, we got a date for next week. And there's a pause. And then he says, and I am not making this up. Ronnie Garvin said to Ric Flair, but we won't be making love. We're going to be wrestling.
Yeah.
And they cut to break.
We ain't going to be making love. We going to be wrestling. Ronnie Garvin.
Now, I'm happy to hear that. I'd much rather see them wrestle. But why? What the hell?
It must have been Flair making a comment about a date.
I guess.
There's so much more on this show.
We're not close to the end.
You were sure this was the second show.
I was absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, convinced the first show had ended and it started accidentally auto-playing the next show somehow.
What's funny is I thought it was supposed to end at 11:30. It ended at 11:20, so it actually went by quicker than I thought.
Rock and Roll Express versus Randy Mulkey and Larry Clark.
Oh.
We got 10 minutes of arm drags as the announcers did anniversaries and birthdays.
Yeah, the announcers are wishing us Merry Christmas and doing the anniversary and birthday shout-outs.
We got a sunset flip finish for the second match in a row. And when Morton hit the sunset flip, Teddy drops down, and you've never seen Teddy Long count a pin so fast. So fast. He knew this went too long. It was time to hurry shit up. And on that note, Magnum TA pinned George South of the belly-to-belly in 10 seconds.
I could not even believe this. I was just like, finally a jobber who does not suck. And he gets pinned in 10 seconds. I was positive this was a rib. I was positive. Somebody at the WWE Network must not like me. And they edited together the worst fucking show they could possibly do because they knew we were going to do 30 years ago this week at NWA WCW. There's no other explanation.
This match was so short, they literally showed the entire match in slow motion replay. Let's see. Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud.
I'll tell everybody a true story. Before you started watching Ring of Honor, I made Mongolian Grill. By the time we got to Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud, I had to eat again. I went over and cooked fried rice. I had gained an appetite. This show was so long. And the last thing I wrote before I walked over there was these things. The first two things that came out of Crockett's mouth when Arn Anderson versus Josh Stroud started. Look at the muscles on this guy. Muscles? Look at the arms on this guy. What is with David Crockett and muscles?
He has nothing to say. He was a horrible announcer. His two favorite things to say were, look at him, and watch this right here. Those in every match. Josh Stroud, in all honesty, outside of maybe Nikita Koloff, had the best body on the show.
Yeah.
So Arn worked his arm over for a while and pinned him with a gourd buster. There's the second match in a row where I began my notes with, how long is this show?
Only one more match, and this is the main event.
Shivani interviewed Dusty again, not the main event. Dusty's not the main event, I mean. And he explained the Flair and the Andersons were bad men, but he was going to beat them all. He sleepwalked through this promo, too. Ivan Koloff versus Don Turner.
I was so done at this point.
The main event.
This is the totality of my notes for this match. This went longer than 10 seconds. Finally, the sickle for the pin. I don't remember anything. I didn't care. I was done.
Turner's the guy I talked about walking the ropes. Shivani noted that Koloff was using various chokeholds. Turner was unable to take a swinging neck breaker, just fell down on the side of his head, and I haven't pinned him with a clothesline.
God.
In the last segment, Shivani's interviewing Flair.
For the third time. This was where we got the 12-year-old the director thought would be a great girl to zoom in on as Flair is talking about his prowess.
And Flair's talking about how he's going to be in the stockings of 8,000 women Christmas morning. And these women, including the 12-year-old, were just hyperventilating over him.
Christ, I would too after I watched this show.
Flair
The
demands...
pickings are fucking slim, Vinny.
Flair demands, stop showing the girls, keep the camera on me. And then just a second later, he said, stop switching cameras. I want to cut one into the camera. And so he starts to talk about Dusty and Dusty's leg. Then he says, don't cut me off. And Dusty, I'm going to take your leg in. Woo! And they cut him off. They had a time cut. They had to get out of there.
Oh.
That's one of the worst episodes of a wrestling TV show I've ever seen.
I agree.
That
like
was
in history.
so bad.
In history.
Going back over it. Ugh. And like I say, 1 hour nothing but squashes, it has a certain charm. 2 hours, No fucking good.
It's only an hour and a half, dude, but still.
Don't watch that show.
Dude, this better get better next week.
If
This better get better.
this is
But you know what?
this is bad again next week, things will change.
Well, Vinny, as I said, we probably should not have watched this right after the Ring of Honor pay-per-view.
Ring of Honor is better than this
That was a big mistake.
in every way, at every point.
God. Colin O'Reilly, and then this shit. Like, Jesus, what did we do? That's it, everybody. I am spent. What's my heart rate at?
Well,
God, 172? It's not. All right, everybody. On Tuesday,
At the one and only. Woo!
what a show it's going to be. All right, let's do this NWA show. This show is much better.
Oh my God, this was better. So the show opens every week with the clips from the finish from some squash match or some house show somewhere. And this was Nikita Koloff pinning a geek with a Russian sickle. And I don't know who this man was taking the sickle, but he did a full 360 moonsault bump.
Yeah.
It was quite awesome.
It was, in fact, I would go as far as to say it was one of the best flip bumps I have ever seen for a clothesline. Ever.
Because usually when guys try this bump, they'll like do a twist and then do like a forward roll. This dude did a standing moonsault flip and hooked himself over Nikita's arm.
Oh, yeah. And
It was awesome.
it wasn't even like a standing shooting star press where you kind of go forward, but you're going down the whole time. He got hit. His lower body rotated around the guy's whole arm, and then he fell down and was dead. That was a finish.
It was
Because
amazing.
it looked like it should have been a finish.
I'll say. So Dusty cuts a promo about how prestigious it is to have the world champion competing on the show. And he said the women in the crowd told him he had his hair cut by a weed eater.
Yes.
So he vowed to debut a new hairdo in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Dusty was trying to be all sexy for the women in the audience, and they cut to these three women in the crowd, at least one of which was super hot. They may all have been, but I couldn't take my eyes off the one in the middle. And they all looked at the camera with a look of bafflement at what they were seeing there on the stage. This big fat guy with a haircut that looked like a cut by a weed eater talking about how sexy he is to all these women. They were like, wow, we did not come here to see you. Which probably led to a lot of problems with Ric Flair later.
It may have. It may have. Sam Houston versus Tony Zane. I will say this for Sam Houston. He could run the ropes.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah.
Let me talk about Tony Zane.
Tony Zane.
This
I don't think
man,
we mentioned this. What?
he is so amazing.
Well, you go ahead then.
All right. Not only was this guy, like all jobbers, fat and pale and totally normal looking, but he had all of these giant bruises all over his body, as if every day of his life he jobbed out to something. A curb, a car door, some tree. I don't even know.
I don't doubt that life as Tony Zane would be difficult.
Oh, yeah.
I just noticed that he had the largest breasts I've seen on a man since my own appearance on the 2015 Christmas show.
Ah.
So, Zane and his boobs got some offense.
Hey, yeah,
And
got some
Houston-
offense.
And then Houston won with the bulldog out of nowhere, and that was that.
This was the beginning of a great show. I knew I was in for a good show when I saw Tony Zane out there, bruised up all over his body from life.
Oh, I will have more to say about jobbers as we go on here.
Oh, yeah.
Tully Blanchard cut a promo.
Hell of a promo.
It was a great promo, and it was a very different promo. No baby doll this week, and it was very subdued. He said, tonight is the last bunkhouse stampede, my last chance to win one of those and collect that bag of money. The U.S. title is still the most important thing on my mind. He dared Magnum TA to fight him anywhere in America. He listed about 20 cities and arenas throughout the country where he'd be willing to fight. In the meantime, there's a TV title tournament going on, and his first round opponent in that tournament was none other than the 7-time world champion Harley Race.
Harley Race.
Yes. And he knew that was going to be a tough fight, but he vowed to win that title. And if Magnum was ever man enough to face him in the ring, he'd have a belt on each shoulder. Simple but effective.
That's right.
We had a Jim Cornette promo. He said he'd been calling the Rock and Roll Express dogs and cowards for 6 months. And if they had any guts, they would come out and shut him up. He wanted the World Tag titles for his mother's living room, and the Midnight Express were to get them for him. And he vowed that someday the Rock and Roll Express would have to face these men, and it turned into his introduction for Loverboy Dennis and Beautiful Bobby, the Midnight Express.
Against Mark Cooper and Josh Stroud.
Yes.
Oh.
Josh Stroud was the man I mentioned last week, a black fella who may have had the best body on the show. Let's talk about Mark Cooper. My new favorite jobber.
Did I not talk last week about how astonishing the gap between the superstars and the jobbers is?
Mark Cooper looked like every aging, skinny, balding, junior high vice principal you ever had, stuffed into a purple singlet and thrown on national TV.
Yes. You know who he looked like? He looked like Aiden English if he had a much, much worse body and wearing a purple singlet.
He did have the receding hairline. He had the bushy mustache. Absolutely no body.
Dude, absolutely no ability.
No ability. He was pale. He was hairy. And he appeared to be, when I say your average junior high vice principal thrown on national TV, if you told me this was the first time he had ever stepped into a wrestling ring, I would believe you.
It may have been the first time and the last time.
No, I'm going to see more Mark Cooper. So he has no idea what he's doing at any point. The Express is just grabbing him and throwing him around, trying to get him into position. At one point, he starts throwing these punches, and you've never, and I mean never, seen worse often. Cornette had to turn his back to the match. He could take no more.
Dude, let's talk more about his singlet. I talked about this last week, okay? This guy, Mark Cooper, needed gear. And so his plan was to call whoever does gear and say, I want a singlet. I got a 30-inch waist. That's ridiculous. I got a 40-inch waist, so make sure you cut it for a man who has a 35-inch waist. Make sure it rides really high on my hips, and please, make sure it's purple. This was a request by Mark Cooper to have a purple singlet.
Gotta make his skin look extra pale.
God.
He was the best.
And he was killed.
So, he killed him to death. They hit him with a top rope knee drop and then a clothesline. Not a lariat. Not a Russian sickle. Just a clothesline, and they pinned him. That was
good
a
for them.
Squash.
Good
that was
for them.
5 stars. Good for me.
Oh, God, this guy. And Bobby Eaton was just like, have we ever mentioned how unbelievable Bobby Eaton was?
It's never a bad thing to say that again.
Yeah, Bobby Eaton was like, God, he was so good. Nothing against Dennis Condrey, but Bobby Eaton just running the show with these geeks.
Yeah. So we go from that to Arn Anderson versus George South.
That's right.
Now, George South...
Very underutilized.
He was also a great jobber, although totally different than Mark Cooper.
Yeah.
And that, as noted, Mark Cooper, they took the man who had the least business in the world of being in a wrestling ring and put him in a wrestling ring. George South is a well-trained, proficient wrestler whose role here was to take a beating.
Yeah, it made me very sad because I was just watching it thinking, we got plenty of geek jobbers here on this show. Plenty. We have more geek jobbers than we know what to do with. And here's a guy who's not bad, and he's in there just getting destroyed. And later, next actually, we have a jobber versus jobber bout.
Yes.
I'm not making this up. A jobber
I've never
versus...
seen that before.
Oh, man, you got it here on this show. But all I could think was, why is poor George South a jobber? This guy's got some talent here. He was at the top of the jobber heap.
Yes. It's a fine way to put it. So his offense consisted of one sunset flip attempt. Arn blocked it and hit the gourd buster for the win.
I liked it.
I thought it was great.
He just slowly took the man apart. He took apart his arm. He took apart his shoulder. He took him apart piece by piece and then beat him. Great.
Ric Flair came out for a promo. He's cutting this classic promo about how great he looks, how much women love him, how great his robe is.
They were way more into him than they were Dusty.
Think about that for a minute. He went on here and grabbed a microphone on national television and said, "Look how cool my robe is."
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they agreed. They're like, God damn, that's a great robe.
And so did I.
And you look great in it.
Cool. Yeah. He began to list all of the men he had beaten, some of whom were wrestling in other promotions.
Vinny, I beg of you that somewhere in the report you list that Ric Flair referred to his cousin as Arnold Anderson.
He did say that. I will try to get that in there.
I have been watching Arn Anderson for at least half of my adult life and maybe more, and not one time did I think, what is Arn short for? Arnold. His name is Arnold Anderson.
Yeah.
What? That blew my mind.
And he wrapped up by saying, "You know what? It's so great being Ric Flair. I might stick around for another 20 years.
That was amazing.
And he overshot that goal by nearly a decade.
Dude, he stuck around for 20 more years, and he would have stuck around for 20 more if anybody would have let him.
Yeah.
But they didn't. But he achieved his goal.
That's true.
This guy would still be wrestling today if Vince allowed him.
That's a fact. Rocky King versus Mac Jeffers.
Jobber versus jobber.
Almost exactly the term you did. I wrote jobber on jobber combat.
Just like, wow.
It's like the Road Warriors no-showed, so they just took their opponents and put them against each other.
Now, to be fair, Rocky King had been involved in some stuff, so he was actually at the top of the jobber hill, maybe even above George South.
Sure.
But he was still a jobber.
He was totally a jobber. They did mention that this man and his dope afro, that's my terminology, not theirs, but he had formed a tag team with Jimmy Valiant called The Street People.
The Street People.
Yes. So they had a very basic match. High spot, face lock. High spot, face lock. They were green. They got a little lost running the rope sometimes, but it was totally fine. Rocky King was a talented athlete, you could tell, and he won with a power slam.
Yeah.
Yay, Rocky King and Mac Jeffers. This is better than many Raw matches.
Hey, it was a
In fact,
very solid jobber versus jobber battle.
Yeah.
And most people on Raw are, in fact, jobbers. So
90% of them.
90% of them are, in fact, jobbers.
Magnum TA got a promo. Ran down Tully Blanchard and Ole Anderson. And the point of this promo was to talk about all the great things Dusty Rhodes is going to do. I know they're friends.
Well, you know, it's all about Big Dust.
It was, in fact, all about Big Dust. Before there was Triple H, there was Dusty Rhodes. So Magnum vowed that Dusty would win the TV title tournament. And so those fans who were cheering for Flair, they must have forgotten what Flair had done to Dusty, and they promised Dusty would beat Flair for the belt. Black Bart versus Jim Jeffers.
The Jeffers are all over this show.
They may have been twins.
And I think they were brothers.
Exactly the same. Thick-legged, barrel-chested dudes with handlebar mustaches and mullets.
God, I learned, I may have mentioned this last week, I've forgotten, but Jim Jeffers died 2 years ago.
That sucks.
Yeah, listen, seeing Jim Jeffers here on the show made my whole weekend. He's the most jobbery jobber that you could possibly have. More so than maybe anyone else on this whole show. We talked a lot about this guy last week. He got to make a comeback on Black Bart. And it was the most hilariously terrible comeback that you've ever seen. He leaps in the air for this god-awful drop kick where you land flat back. He struggles mightily to his feet. He leaps into the air for another one. He gets about half as high. He does a flat back bump. He struggles mightily to his feet again. And finally, he goes for the third drop kick. And by the way, everybody, if you've seen Jim Jeffers, let's just think about the fact that his plan was to hit 3 consecutive drop kicks in his comeback. He fails on the final drop kick. He lands flat on his back, and Black Bart hits the big leg drop for the pin. Vinny, this was every mid-card match I saw in Cloverdale in the mid-90s. And then, on top of that, we have reviewed these shows before, and we have claimed that, man, it's amazing to watch the show because the fans are into everything. They cheer every moment of every match. Wrong. They're into it when there are stars. When you've got Black Bart versus Jim Jeffers, they don't give a shit. And then, when it's over, Jim Jeffers, after failing on his comeback and being pinned by Black Bart, the crowd booed. They booed the participants for even trying to entertain them. Not like today when people cheer because thank God the match is over. That's pretty disrespectful too. But these guys tried their hardest, nobody cared, and then when it was over, they booed them. Like, fuck you two for having a bad match in front of us.
Everything you have said is true.
I'm like Jim Cornette in that promo at the beginning of the show. Tell me if I'm lying.
Yes, everything you said was true. And yet, when Black Bart got the pin, I wrote, wrong man won here.
Jim Jeffers should win every match.
Now, speaking of Cornette, here we are, a half hour into the show. He came back for promo number 2. He presented Shivani with a tennis racket necktie for Christmas. He said that until the Rock and Roll Express had the guts to defend the titles against the Midnights, he was going to keep calling them dogs and cowards. So they would always be the second best team in wrestling until they beat the Midnights, and then he changed his mind and took the necktie back and he left. At this point, this became the best show I've seen all time, all my life. Magnum TA versus Ole Anderson.
Holy smokes, this match.
I don't even know where to begin.
I'll begin. These men were fighting for the U.S. heavyweight title. And every wrestler in the world today needs to go back and watch these two men battle for a belt. And watch how they worked a match when the U.S. heavyweight title was on the line. This was not just any other match. There was no bullshit. The bell rang, and they got in a fight. And they fought, and they fought, and they fought, and they fought. In this match, by the way, it went to a 20-minute time limit, but the rules were there had to be a pinfall or a submission. So Jim Crockett Jr. comes out, and he says the match has to continue until somebody wins, which begs the question, why was there a time limit? But the key here is it was a 20-minute time limit, and they worked the craziest pace for 20 minutes.
Yes.
They worked, and they worked, and they fought, and they fought, and they had a contest for a championship. And at one point, David Crockett, who we have been very critical of, we have talked about how much he sucks at his job. At one point, David Crockett says, and I quote, "Neither man giving an inch." This was a fact. This was not a cliche. Neither man gave an inch. Any moment that they could be beating the shit out of each other while they were breathing, they were attempting to beat the shit out of each other when they were competing here in this match. Constant covers. How many times have you seen a match in 2015 and it's time for a guy to make a comeback and he just starts doing a bunch of moves? And yes, they're all of his moves, and everybody knows the moves, and they cheer for the moves, but it's just move, move, move. Then the next guy cuts him off. Move, move, move. Where's the cover? They made 1,000 pinfall attempts in this match. Why? Because the championship is on the line, and you have to pin your opponent in order to win. Crowd was going crazy the entire time. They do the 20-minute time limit deal. They restarted after the break. They battle like crazy, and then finally there is the Arn Anderson comes out, Dusty comes out, Arn trips Magnum. David Crockett, by the way, when Arn Anderson tripped Magnum, he lost his shit. He could not believe in the middle of this contest that this fucker had the temerity to trip Magnum. So then Dusty's there, and Dusty comes out, and he goes after Arn. Ole's distracted. I keep saying Magnus. Magnum with the reverse rolling cradle gets the pin. This was the best until the main event.
The key to this, more than anything else, and there's a lot to say about it, but as you noted, this was 20 minutes of intense battle. And there was not like a big heat segment and a big comeback. One guy would fight all he could for a minute or two, and then he would make a mistake or get cut off. The other guy would fight as hard as he could for a minute or two, and he get cut off. This only worked because everything they did was awesome. And when I say everything they did was awesome, I don't mean they did a big giant flippy-do or some wacky convoluted slam. They punched each other in the face. They kneed each other in the gut. They did an arm bar or a hammerlock, trying to twist the man's arm so that he would quit and submit. They did very, very basic stuff, but it all looks totally, utterly believable. Especially the punches that Magnum was throwing and Ole was selling. And I watched these giddy, and I was trying to decide who was doing a better job. Was it Magnum's delivery or Ole's selling? I couldn't decide. They were both amazing. The other key to this is, because they didn't come out doing 10,000 slams and suplexes and dives, when they tried some pretty basic big moves, suddenly it meant something. Ole set him up for a pile driver. And Magnum hit a backdrop, then a drop kick. And everyone went crazy. And they kept going for pins. Both guys were selling exhaustion, and it was believable exhaustion because they had been in a fight for 20 minutes. And they did the time limit deal, which was a wacky excuse to take a commercial break, really. And they come back after the break. Ole seemed to have recovered faster. He was really tearing into Magnum. And Arn tripped him. Dusty goes after Arn. Now, it's 2015. It's the end of 2015. It's 52 weeks in a year. That means we have seen minimum 100 distraction finishes this year. And they're all something stupid. Somebody's music plays, or their pyro goes off, or somebody shows up in the crowd or at the announce desk or cuts a promo. All dumb. Ole Anderson was distracted because a pissed-off 300-pound Texan was beating the fuck out of his cousin.
It's better. Every distraction finish we see in 2015 involves a babyface being a dumb shit. What happened here was, and we learned in the promo afterwards more information on this. What happened here was Arn tripped Magnum TA, and Dusty attacks Arn because of what he has done. In Ole Anderson's mind, how dare this Dusty Rhodes beat up my cousin Arn? How dare he? In Ole's mind, he has been wronged. And he goes over there, and that's when he gets rolled up and pinned. Because in the deal afterwards when they're going crazy and they're cutting the big promo there, Ole, I think this was the one. Actually, no, it was later in the main event. We'll get to later in the main event, but essentially, the heels believe they have been wronged, even though they're the ones that have done all of the dastardly things. Not in their minds. In their minds, hey, they're just doing what has to be done. How dare Dusty Rhodes attack Arn? Ole cannot handle this.
I'm so sad now.
Hey, you'll be happy again when we talk about this. Actually, it's not the main event. There's standby matches after this next match.
Standby matches to follow Flair, Garvin, and Magnum Ole.
But before we get to Flair and Garvin, they announced the February 7th show. Fans select the matches. What matches do you want to see? Do you want to see the Road Warriors versus the Russians? Do you want to see the Midnights against the Rock and Roll Express? What do you want to see? And Jim Crockett says, you get to vote. All of you fans get to vote. Head to the NWA app. Oh, wait, they don't have an NWA app. He says, all you have to do, write down your 4 matches that you want to see and mail them to Atlanta. And they put the address up on the screen where you can mail your postcard with the matches that you want to see for this show on February 7th. It was so quaint.
It was pretty amazing.
I loved it.
So he makes this announcement, and they go to commercial, and as they go to commercial, the following words are on the screen, which I am not making up. This is what it said to the letter. Coming up in a moment, the match of the year. Now, who's going to turn the channel after that?
Nobody.
The best match of the year? I'm going to stay here and watch.
They better not have either, because it was the match of the year.
It may have been Ric Flair versus Ron Garvin for the World Championship.
Oh, my God, this match. Listen, at the end of the show, I realized why fans got so mad when Ron Garvin won the world title from Ric Flair. Because he is missing the famous it. His promos were not very good, and he was lacking in the presence department. But in the ring, in this match, I don't even know what to say.
You know how in 2015, I'm going to pick one name here. Lots of guys do this. Well, actually, he does it more than anyone else. Eric Young on Impact will get in a fan's face, and he will throw back his fist as if he's about to throw a punch, and the fans will openly laugh at him. If Ron Garvin or Ric Flair had made a move towards a fan, there'd have been a riot to get out of the arena.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't because of anything they did to the fans. It's because of what they did to each other. They were chopping the piss out of each other.
Let's start at the very beginning, actually. Ric Flair, earlier in the show, is in his robe, and he's talking about all of the ladies, and he's being the nature boy, and he's doing his promo and everything like that. But now it is time to defend his championship. And Ric Flair comes out, and this dude is deadly serious. There is no bullshit. There is no laughing. There is no strutting. He comes out. He's got a serious look on his face. He takes off his robe. He takes off his belt, slaps his shoulders, and he's going to have a fight. And then they have a fight because the world title is on the line. This is even more important, by the way, everybody, than the U.S. heavyweight title. This is the world championship. And they beat the holy living fuck out of each other for what seemed to be about an hour.
Yes.
Ric Flair was, maybe not so much today, he was renowned for his cardio. And he and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, they would also always have these marathon matches, and they would both always try to blow the other guy up. And granted, Flair was, he was unbelievable. He was the greatest wrestler of all time, so this could have been selling. But near the end of this match, this fucking guy looked more tired than Ronnie Garvin. And Ronnie Garvin, I'm sure that Ronnie Garvin was carried quite a bit here by Ric Flair, but this dude was working his ass off. He was not going half speed. He was going full speed he's pouring down sweat. They're just going at this ridiculous pace. Flair's breathing hard, and he's still going, everything like that. Ron Garvin's just right there next to him the entire time. Ron Garvin. Man, this guy was great in this match.
There was so much to love here. We talked about how this is not a performance. They were not out there to entertain. They were not hitting their moves. They were not getting their shit in. They were fighting. So after about 5 minutes of just chops and slaps and violence, it goes to break. When it comes back to break, what you see, both men are rolling around on the mat. Garvin has Flair by the hair and is trying to yank it out, and Flair has Garvin by the throat.
That's right. God, it was great.
So awesome. They went outside, did some chops and some bumps in the concrete.
Yeah, Flair was taking bumps on the concrete. And then in the ring, he takes a vertical suplex, screams.
He screamed as if all his vertebrae had spontaneously shattered.
Yes, he broke his back again.
Yes.
Off a vertical suplex, which, by the way, he needed a rope break on.
Yeah, so much greatness. Talking about David Crockett, he was among the worst announcers I've ever seen, but he was the man on this show.
Oh, man.
David Crockett calling a bad squash is terrible. David Crockett calling a great match was great because he's the biggest mark of all time.
That is the whole key. His weakness was also his strength. He was so bad at his job. He was like a fan that you gave a microphone to, and he wasn't a professional, and he just stuttered his way through everything.
Yeah.
He had no sense of pacing, of timing, of the fact that we're on fucking television. Just spit it out, fucker. But when he was watching a show like this, where the matches were unbelievable, he was so great because he was living and dying with everything. He loved every moment of this match, and he made you love it.
Yeah. So they were trading strikes on their knees, and the more they traded strikes, as the match went on, the better it started to go for Garvin. He was a superior striker. And he hits a series of headbutts. He chokes Flair down. As choking him, slaps him hard in the face. There's more chopping. There's a big backdrop. And Flair finally has enough of this bullshit. He crotches Garvin on the ropes. He grabs the referee and just throws him down for the DQ. And this sounds like a bullshit finish. I assure you it wasn't.
Well, I mean, it was, but it told a story.
I understood. Well, okay, yes, it was, but I didn't blame Flair for getting himself disqualified.
Well, that's the key. Last week on the show, Ronnie Garvin challenged Ric Flair when he was all decked out in his suit and being all Ric Flair and being all cocky. And Rick is like, Ronnie Garvin is going to challenge me for the World Heavyweight title? Fuck, let's do it on the show next week. I don't give a shit. I'll kill you. They get in the ring, and the story is, oh my God, this Ronnie Garvin fella is giving Ric Flair the run of his lifetime. Ronnie Garvin is about to beat Ric Flair, and Ric's like, fuck it, I'm getting out of here. It made sense. The Ric Flair character, it made sense for him to do what he did. It made you want to see him wrestle again. It played into the storyline. It was a bullshit finish, but you know what? I got 25 finishes on the show. What do you expect?
Like you say, Flair was a desperate champion.
Yes.
He had given it his all. He was frustrated. As a last resort, he was attacking the ref to save his title. This is not what we see in 2015 where they don't know what to do, so someone just punches the ref or they just do a stupid bump. This was the act of a desperate madman pushed to the edge. So it's a DQ. Dusty is the ring. He puts Flair in the figure four. The Andersons return. They jump Dusty. And about, 8 or 9 babyfaces all hit the ring, but they're hitting it one at a time. And so the proto-horsemen are able to fight them off one by one and keep attacking Dusty. And finally, Magnum, the number 2 hero, is able to lead a big charge, and they clear the ring. And as soon as the horsemen are gone, they tend to the fallen Dusty and to the fallen Garvin. And as they attend to them, Ole hits the announce desk for a promo.
This was the promo. where Ole blames the babyfaces for everything that just happened. Even though Flair was the fucker that threw down the referee and started the entire thing. It's all the babyfaces' fault.
Even though Arn had tripped Magnum in their match.
Yes.
If they had just let the Horsemen win and do what they needed to win matches, there would be none of this violence.
That's right. None of this would have ever happened.
No. You forced our hand, you assholes. So he can't get in the ring anymore without wondering who's going to jump him from behind or interfere with our business. Doesn't know what's going on. Flair says, I just knocked out Garvin. I nearly killed Rhodes. And we're the best. Me and the Andersons are the best. And they're ranting, and they're raving, and they're screaming. And they finally leave. And Tony Schiavone looks in the camera and says, our thoughts are with Dusty Rhodes at this moment. I love this show. I love this show so much.
This was just the best. If you guys have not watched any of these NWA shows that we've been reviewing, go back and watch these two matches. You will love the network. You will pay for the network for the rest of your life because it gives you access to this show.
Yes. You will write it.
Go ahead.
You will write a check to WWE for extra money saying, Dear World Wrestling Entertainment, I find your charge for this network insufficient. I wish to give you more cash. And you will have access to, as Tony Schiavone called him, Pablo Crenshaw against the Italian Stallion. Yeah.
Following Ric Flair versus Ronnie Garvin for the World Heavyweight Championship.
It followed Flair versus Garvin for the world title, and yet it was still only the semi-main.
Oh, yeah. There was a main event still to come.
Really? In fact, this was the death spot. And it was.
They delivered death.
He delivered. Someone died.
Italian Stallion beat Pablo Crenshaw with a power slam.
The highlight of the match was when they wished a happy birthday to Christy Carr from the great city of Seattle, Washington.
Hey, wow.
Yeah. J.J. Dillon cuts a promo. He outright says, this is one of the best programs I've ever seen.
Hey, he was right.
And he congratulated Ole, Magnum, Flair, and Garvin for having great matches. So, the gimmick here is that JJ had been managing Buddy Landel. And things went south, and Landel was gone. So he said, look, in 1985, I took a diamond in the rough, and I made him a bigger star than he's ever been before. Never mentioned my name, of course. Now I want to try something new. In 1986, I'm going to take somebody who was already a star, and I'm going to elevate them to even bigger heights. Now, I heard you men out here, you had the audacity to judge Tully Blanchard, try to get in his head. You have no right to criticize that man. You have no right to criticize his motivations. Doesn't matter that Baby Doll's not there. He's a very confident man. He's going to be very successful. And finally, he promised some surprises for 1986. I'll say it was an awesome promo.
Some surprises in store for 1986.
Pretty much everyone said that, actually, up and down the show.
Yeah, my wife was born. JJ was right.
That was surprising. Dusty and Magnum returned for a promo. So the studio was not big enough for them and for Flair. Started rearranging furniture. And one by one, Dusty, Magnum, and Garvin basically said, I'm ready to fight. Horsemen, get on out here.
This was where Ronnie Garvin was out there just being a guy.
He was outshone.
God, it was sad.
Yeah. But you know what? In WWE, if a guy had a great match and he was a lousy promo, they'd have given him a mic and say, go talk for 20 minutes to expose how terrible he was.
That's right.
Garvin, he had a great match. He was put at the top babyface level. I said, and they said to all three babyfaces, you're all going to go out there and you're all going to get 30 seconds. This is your chance to show us what you can do. Have at it. And they did. And he wasn't exposed. They didn't run him to the ground doing promo after promo. They just gave him a chance. And that's how it went.
God, can you imagine if this show, because they were going to do Ron Garvin versus Ric Flair, can you imagine if the show opened with a 20-minute Ron Garvin promo to set up the match?
I'm going to light myself on fire just thinking about it.
Oh. And you know they would have done it on Raw.
That's exactly what they would have done. Yeah, so eventually the Horsemen did not appear, and Dusty said, fuck it, let's go get them.
And apparently they did, but we don't know what happened because there was trouble backstage during the illustrious main event on this show. David Crockett says, there's trouble backstage. I've got to go find out what's going on. And that was it.
Let me state for the record that on this, the finest show I watched in 2015, the main event was Tully Blanchard versus Kent Glover.
Kent Glover.
As you noted, Crockett says the trouble backstage and he leaves. Tully, Schiavone doesn't care.
No.
He barely referenced it at the time. He barely referenced it after the match.
Quite frankly, there's probably often trouble backstage. Tony's like, yeah. Horsemen are back there. Flair's in the back.
It's Saturday afternoon at Turner Studios.
Chicks everywhere.
So Tully wins with the slingshot suplex, and then Schiavone wraps up the show. He wishes everyone a happy new year, and he basically says, remember everyone, Dusty and Ric Flair still hate each other. And the show ended, and I was so happy.
You know why you were happy? Because when the show went off the air, Tony Schiavone looked in the camera, and he said, hey, I want to thank all of you for a great 1985. What a year it's been. And what a year we're going to have next year. Everybody, be safe, have a happy new year, and we'll see you in 1986. It was a fun show, hosted by a fun, friendly guy, and his buddy, who was also a fun, friendly guy, who want you, the viewer, to join them and enjoy this fun next week. Unlike Raw, where the authority hates you, they're trying to make your life, you, the viewer, they're trying to make your life hell. They want to make sure you don't get anything you want. This was very refreshing to have a show where everybody wished me well at the end, and I couldn't wait to see those people again. And one of them was Tony Schiavone, and the other was David Crockett. That's saying something.
So yeah, that was better than Raw.
Oh, God. After last week's show was not better than Raw. This show was 1,000 times better than Raw. A great wrestling television show, and we're going to keep watching it, Vinny. Thank God for this program.
Yeah.
As somebody emailed me. They either emailed or texted me, and they said something like, don't give up on the NWA show this week. There are 2 good matches. That was the understatement of the decade.
Well, he's not wrong.
He's definitely not wrong, and I thank him very much for that text, but that was funny. And that's it, everybody.
You're gonna be mine all night long.
Hell of a show he had, love.
It's in the package.
You have to take it out and just put it right in your seat.
Oh, I should not.
Oh, man.
Horrible idea. All right. So, NWA.
That's right.
NWA Championship Wrestling.
This show.
January 4th, 1986. Probably not as good as the January 4th show in the Tokyo Dome. Over the clip of Dusty.
You don't know that.
I don't know. I said probably.
Yeah.
Opened with a show opened with a clip, yes, of Dusty Rhodes putting a figure 4 on Ole Anderson as the Road Warriors ran interference and they stopped the Horsemen from breaking it up. And this would air about 18 more times before this show was through.
Hey, you got to get the angles over.
Tony Schiavone and David Crockett congratulated Dusty on winning the national championship. I have no earthly idea who had been the champion, and they did not tell me. He said Ole had suffered a serious leg injury at the hands of Rhodes.
It was, what's his face?
Landell?
Yeah. Pretty sure it was Landell.
I guess so. Yeah, Landell disappeared, and they all stopped mentioning him by name.
Yeah. They showed up and...
Yeah. Things happen. So, they brought in Tully Blanchard and J.J. Dillon, who I hope you're fans of these men. They're going to be around a lot in the next, 20 minutes, or how long it takes to discuss this. Tully said he had hired J.J. as the associate director of Tully Blanchard Enterprises. I believe for the first time on this program, he referred to himself, the Andersons, and Flair as the Four Horsemen.
That's right.
Said that Dusty and his friends had been ganging up on them and taking them out. He said the former national champion had been managed by Dillon, but that guy had failed. He was a loser, and now Dillon was aligned with a winner. And Shivani asked him about Baby Doll.
Here's the Wikipedia on this. Dusty Rhodes did get the title from Buddy Landell. Sort of. Landell won it at Starrcade, and then it says here, Rhodes was awarded the title in a phantom match after Landell was fired due to his drug problem. Wow.
Well, that'll happen.
Facts on Wikipedia.
Yes. And Shivani asked him about Baby Doll, and they blew him off. Rock and Roll Express versus Jim Jeffers and Thunderfoot.
My goddamn favorite wrestler, Jim
I
Jeffers.
was going to say which one. So, it's very early in the match. Ricky Morton has Jim Jeffers in a headlock, and Jeffers devises a cunning plan. Behind Morton's back, he gestures towards his own tag team partner, Thunderfoot. He points at him, and he taps his own knee, letting him know, I'll push him into the ropes. You hit him with your knee. And then he pushes him into the wrong set of ropes.
It's so unbelievable. All I could think was, I hope that this was done on purpose. Because Jim Jeffers knew he was a jobber, and as a result, he's not as good as the other wrestlers. So it only makes sense that he would come up with a plan and then fuck up his own plan.
They cut him off. He took some wacky bumps, and they pinned him with a double dropkick.
Yeah. I love Jim Jeffers. He's like such an awesome jobber. And, it's great. Every old jobber gimmick. Slam the guy and lift him right back up. Always a classic.
Nothing will ever top.
Like, why don't you slam him and then cover him? Why do you slam him and then lift him back up again? Right?
Yeah. Nothing will ever top, though, when he said, tag team partner, help me, and then pushed him to the wrong set of ropes.
Yeah.
I've never seen that before. If you like, I said this already. Yeah, every time Tully Blanchard appears in this promo, do a shot. Or appears in the show, do a shot. They were back for another promo. Shivani asked him about Baby Doll again. And Tully tried to explain all he had done for Baby Doll. Took her out of nowhere. Gave her gifts, jewelry, furs. Took her on trips all over the world. And she had turned his back on him. He said, Dusty Rose, you once called that woman a Jezebel. And I defended her honor. But now I know she's even lower than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lower than a Jezebel.
So they go to commercial. When they come back, Blanchard and Dillon were still there.
Yes.
It was their third promo and I believe 3 segments. Dillon explains he has cut ties with all former clients. He is talking about Dusty Rhodes' conspiracy to take out the 4 horsemen one by one. They said they was going to counterattack, and we were going to take out all the dominoes. And the domino at the end obviously was Dusty Rhodes, but that first domino, not someone like Sam Houston who Dusty has trained. No. First domino is Dusty's best friend, Jimmy Valiant.
Yeah.
The Boogie Woogie Man.
No, he called him the Boogeyman.
The Boogie Man.
He called him the Boogie Woogie Man. The Boogeyman, Jimmy Valiant.
Taking this man down is the key to taking out Dusty Rhodes.
Yes, when you take him down, the rest will fall.
That's right. And then Shivani had been interviewing them. David Crockett runs in and says, no, here's what really happened. And had the angle from some other TV show where Tully and Baby Doll broke up. So, Crockett's interviewing Tully and Baby Doll. Tully asks her, I haven't seen you in weeks. Where have you been? Baby Doll explains, well, you bought me that ticket to Acapulco. J.J. Dillon told me you bought me a ticket to Acapulco, so I went on a Mexican vacation. And J.J. stepped up and said, look, you're a beautiful woman, but you need to do a better job of spreading lies when you're trying to cover your tracks. And Tully instantly believed JJ and assumed Baby Doll must be lying to him. Then we got some stuff that would not fly on TV in 2016 when Tully hauled off and slapped her in the face.
God, he just waylaid her.
Yeah. So Dillon then holds Crockett back as Tully grabs Baby Doll by the hair. And before he can do anything more fiendish, Dusty comes up to make the save. And he is shouting at Tully, never put your hands on this woman again. Did he say this because violence against women is the wrong thing to do? No. Dusty said this because she don't belong to you. She belonged to me.
She's now Dusty's property.
He has commandeered her. Commandeered her.
Yes.
Stolen her.
But she didn't care.
No, as we shall
She
get to.
likes a
as
champion.
she will get to later in the show. And they go back to the studio after this. Now Tully's all pissed off they've embarrassed him by showing this footage. He cuts this fiery promo on Rhodes for sticking his nose where it didn't belong. He vowed to take Baby Doll back and teach her a lesson. This will never be shown in a great moments in feminism class.
No.
Harley Race versus Tony Zane. I don't know how many thousands of men Harley Race has wrestled in his illustrious, glorious career, but very few of them were worse than Tony Zane.
Maybe none.
Quite possibly none. The neck breaker he fucked up here.
He did the old, let's go for the neck breaker, but I'm going to bump way too early.
Yes.
And Harley Race will just fall down.
Yes. They had a horrible match, and Race won with the middle rope headbutt.
Tony Zane was so bad. And even like Harley was, this was 1986. Harley obviously is in a wheelchair now, but even in 1986, he looked like he was having a hell of a time getting around. Trying to get up to the middle rope to do his diving headbutt. It was just kind of slow.
This was very clearly not prime Harley Race.
This match was a level of horrible I've not seen in some time.
Yeah. Ivan Koloff came out for a promo. He was in street clothes, which meant a cheap suit, and I don't know what you call that hat he had on.
Who knows?
Jaunty. It's definitely jaunty. And a big, huge trophy. Because he and his Russian comrades had just won these 6-man championships. He said he knew the competition for this championship would be very fierce, because all you Americans are going to come and try to take this title from the Russians, because the Russians are champions. That makes you sick. He said they had proven the Road Warriors were not as bad as everyone thought. And he vowed to beat the Rock and Rolls and regain the tag team titles, and also said Nikita would be magnet for the U.S. belt. And it's really too bad that all didn't happen, and Nikita was just a champion in all 3 divisions. Singles, tag, and 6-man.
Fine little promo.
Yeah. Ron Bass versus Bill Tabb.
Bill Tabb
Yeah.
versus Ron Bass.
Yes.
This was one of those rare matches where sometimes you look at the two guys and it's like, okay, this guy's in shape. It looks good. The other guy's fat, out of shape. It's clear who the superstar is. It's the exact opposite in this match. Bill Tabb had a good physique, and Ron Bass was a fat, sloppy guy. And Ron Bass was the star.
He beat him in a minute with a claw.
With a claw.
Pinned him with a claw, I believe. And as he's leaving the ring, one fan shouts, "Thank you, Ron."
Man.
And I can only assume that Bill Tabb was black, and this was in Georgia, and that's why this fan was happy.
That's just not right.
I know it's not. I got no other reason why he'd be so happy to see Ron Bass win.
I don't either. During the commercial break, they always have this old school 1985 graphic. It's so ghetto. And it says, "Come right back because," and then it'll say something like, "Great in-ring action to come," or "You won't want to miss what's next." They go to commercial this time, and it says, and I quote, "We will be back with the Major League of Wrestling." And they return with Dusty.
Okay.
It's all about Dusty.
Yes. So Dusty's there with Baby Doll. Now, last time we had seen Baby Doll, a half hour ago, she had been violently attacked by one man, and then another man had come along and said, "She's mine now." Like cavemen, these people were. But Baby Doll is thrilled. She's thrilled to be Dusty Rhodes' woman. Dusty's bragging about taking out Ole Anderson. Says, "I have a crappy body because I hate going to the gym. It doesn't matter because I make $500,000 a year."
Yes.
This after bragging about destroying a man's leg and taking a woman through physical force. How is this a babyface promo?
He flat out he told us, "I'm rich. I don't work out. I'd rather party. This woman is my property." And he was the good guy.
And I injured a man's leg.
And I tried to kill a man.
Yeah. He explained Baby Doll was not his valet. She was his personal.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
It's personal.
He gave her a chance to speak for herself. How gracious of him. And she explained that she promised revenge on Tully. Then she had said she was thrilled to be by Dusty's side because he had her heart of gold? No. Because he had defended her honor? No. because she loves champions. That's what she said.
Yeah.
How is any of this a babyface promo?
She's a blatant gold digger.
Yeah. And Dusty's going along with it.
He's taking advantage of it.
This was bizarre.
Let's just keep watching.
Ron Garvin versus Mac Jeffers.
I did like that when he introduces his personal, and she talks about how she always loved champions and vows to pay Tully back. As they're leaving the stage, Tony is just laughing.
Yes.
Because he's thinking the same thing we are. What the fuck?
Yes. So,
more Jeffers.
Mac Jeffers took it upon himself to take Garvin down 30 seconds in and go for a win with his feet on the ropes. Don't do this, everyone.
Let me talk more about this. So, first off, the idea of putting your feet on the ropes is that if your feet are on the ground, your weight is equally distributed. Whereas if you put your feet up high, more weight will be on your opponent.
Yes.
Okay. So normally your opponent will be next to the ropes, and you will be perpendicular to your opponent with
Sure.
your feet on the ropes.
Yes.
Not this fucker. He has Ron Garvin's head facing the ropes. He covers him in a perpendicular manner, so he's parallel to the ropes.
Yes.
And then he tries to put his foot on the ropes, putting himself completely off balance.
So he was on all fours making this cover. The ropes were not behind him.
They were next to him.
They were off to his side.
Yeah.
And he put both feet on them.
The Jeffers clan.
I'm shocked this tactic failed.
Oh, they're amazing.
So Ron Garvin was very annoyed, and for about 3 or 4 glorious minutes, he beat the fuck out of this man.
David Crockett is both the best and the worst in the world at his job.
Yes.
When his job is to stand there and interview guys in between matches, he's just terrible. But when he's there calling the action like a fan, he's unbelievable. He's pulverizing this guy, he screams. He's so excited as Ron Garvin beats the shit out of Mac Jeffers. Ron Garvin is this week's best wrestler of the week.
We need more Ron Garvins in 2015.
I didn't mention this, but last night, and keep in mind, everybody, this was my buddy Dave Gray came over. He wanted to watch UFC, but he's also an old school wrestling fan. He used to watch all of these shows. One of his favorite memories as a kid was when his dad took him to the Great American Bash.
Wow.
Yeah. So when the show's over, he doesn't have the network. And I'm like, dude, you got to get this network. We were just watching this Ron Garvin Ric Flair match. This is immediately after the Robbie Lawler Carlos Condit fight, which the 5th round of that fight was one of the best rounds in the history of mixed martial arts. Dating back to the 1800s, as Harley Race would say. Fucking unbelievable round. I go, you got to watch this. I put on last week's show, and we watched Ric Flair versus Ronnie Garvin again. Even after Condit Lawler, that fucking match was better the second time than it was the first time. We marked out more for the match the second time than we marked out for the fucking fight. God, Ronnie Garvin was great. And he just pulverized, as David Crockett said, this young Mac Jeffers. It was awesome. And then he punched him for the pin.
Yes. His finish was a punch.
He punched him right in the face and it was over.
Shivani goes to interview Harley Race. We had discussed Race's cardio and his difficulty moving around. We have not discussed that he paired this with an enormous permed afro and a mustache. Hell of a look for this man. He said he had held the world title, the real world title, not that plastic thing, 7 different times. This is the world title, he said, dating back to the 1800s. And now he heard that Magnum TA was the next big star. Well, tonight we're going to find out how bad Magnum is. And then, down the road, he's got a cage match for the world title in St. Louis. We're going to find out what kind of a champion Ric Flair was. That was a good promo. Road Warriors versus Josh Stroud and Gene Ligon and Mark Hawk in a 2-on-3 handicap squash match. The Warriors won in about 15 seconds with clotheslines. In those 15 seconds, I believe it was Ligon, but the fat guy in the singlet, he may have shown himself to be the worst wrestler in the world in a mere 15 seconds.
He was very, very bad.
He was horrible.
And let me get this straight. The Road Warriors are going to have a squash match, and they can't find one fucking jobber that doesn't have the last name Hawk?
Yes. That made it better.
You know, this is not in any way hard-hitting analysis. But when the Road Warriors hit the ring, you fucking knew carnage was coming. That's why they were so awesome.
Yeah.
You knew when the Road Warriors hit the ring, all hell was going to break loose. The shit was going to hit the fan, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
And it did.
Oh, it did.
And you know what? It's exactly like Brock Lesnar. And he's the only one.
Mm-hmm.
Who else, when they hit the ring, do you know that shit's going to hit the fan? Nobody.
No one in years.
Brock is it.
Yeah. So
I do that with the Road Warriors. I do that with Ronnie Garvin.
Oh, yeah.
The list goes on and on.
Yes.
With every one of these jobbers.
After the break, the Warriors got a promo on Oli, and then the Russians. So the Russians a six-man chance. So we just proved we can beat three men by ourselves, but the rules won't let us challenge for the titles as a twosome, so we're going to have to find a partner. And that's basically all they had to say. Raging Bull versus Larry Clark went way, way, way longer than it needed to. I did not need to see Raging Bull working over Larry Clark's thigh muscles for several minutes. He put on a toe hold.
God, the Raging Bull.
He used a half grab, and finally he won with his flying forearm. This sucked. And yes, for Raging Bull, he had that tremendous match with Buddy Landel, and it's been all downhill since then.
I'll say.
David Crockett interviewed Ric Flair. He had a lot to say. I did not get it all down. But one of his points was, in Dusty Rhodes' promo earlier, Dusty had claimed to be the highest paid athlete in the world. And Flair said, no. I spend more money on booze and a night of drinking with Leona Helmsley than you make in 6 months. Dated, but still a great line.
Yes.
Then he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is basically his point. Now that Tully and Baby Doll were broken up, he could tell the truth of how he'd always felt about Baby Doll. He always thought she was ugly.
That's terrible.
No, that's not his exact words.
Well, what he said was, everybody called her the perfect 10, but come on.
Yeah.
On my worst day, she'd be at the bottom of the barrel.
Yes, that's a quote. He always felt that way about her, and he said, out of respect for Tully, he wouldn't let her ride Space Mountain.
But she was begging.
So she was begging. You want to make that clear. So to recap, yes, she's ugly, Flair said, but the only reason he didn't bang her was because he had respect for Tully.
Yeah.
So apparently he bangs ugly chicks all the time.
Yeah, he's Ric Flair.
But yeah,
it doesn't matter.
He gets 7s and 8s.
I mean, he mentioned that on his worst day. It's got to be
true.
a bad one.
All right, yeah. So yeah.
He flat out said, this Flair promo was unbelievable. How many times have I mentioned the gap between the stars and the geeks is so vast? Unlike today, when virtually every single person is at the same level, except Cena and Brock are above everybody else. God, Flair was just so great.
Arn Anderson versus Kent Glover. Everyone, hold your hand out to the side, palm up. Now make a fist. Now swing that fist in front of you. That is how Kent Glover threw punches.
Still better than Gabby Garcia.
Still better?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, Arn won with the gourd buster.
I would be remiss if I did not mention that Ric Flair, in his promo, was mentioning about how he had such giant footsteps that even Bigfoot could not follow him. That's what he said. Ric Flair mentioned Bigfoot.
I couldn't get it all down.
That's what he said.
I had a lot to say.
Even Bigfoot could not follow in my large footsteps.
Okay.
What a line.
Shivani interviews Flair and Arn together.
You know what makes me sad? I don't know. Like, there's so much stuff. If I had 5 hours to interview Ric Flair, there's so many things I'd love to ask him, and I bet you anything you'd have no idea what I was talking about. I mean, he can't remember his promo about Bigfoot.
No.
But I'd love to know more about it. Did you watch The $6 Million Man, Rick? Were you aware of the Patterson footage? What was it that caused you in this promo to talk about Bigfoot?
Was Bigfoot in the news in 1986?
Well, he was big in the 60s and 70s.
I see.
So Flair must have heard of Bigfoot.
Oh, sure. So Shivani goes to interview Flair and Arn together. They showed we talked about the angle that opened the show, and they showed many times. But here's how it all went down. Ole was having a match when Dusty Rhodes jumped him and attacked his leg. Put him in a debilitating figure 4 leg lock, came off the top rope onto the leg. Meanwhile, his big 300-pound buddies, the Road Warriors, ran interference, so the Horsemen couldn't save their friend. Then when it was all done, the Horsemen finally cleared the ring and tended to their fallen comrade. This is the most bass-backwards thing I've ever seen. Since, this seriously was Vince Russo at his peak lack of logic.
Kind of. It was revenge.
You could argue it as a taste of their own medicine.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. They had done this to Dusty.
Yes.
And Dusty finally got his revenge. But yes, the theme of this show, up and down the show, every heel believes he's a victim.
Yes.
Everyone.
That is true.
Every single one, no matter what happens. The Horsemen could blow up the Omni, and a babyface would run in and make the save, and they would call themselves victims. I cannot believe that he ran in and attacked me. We only blew up the Omni. How dare he come in? Every heel is a victim. It's great.
So they show this angle, and then Flair vows to put Dusty in the hospital within 90 days. And then Arn cuts the best babyface promo he ever cut, with one exception. But he's talking about how Ole helped raise me. Now Dusty and his 300-pound buddies have crippled him in front of his own eyes. The only misstep he had here was in a live promo, he said, "I have been inbred with Anderson blood."
Well, you know.
Live TV, everyone. So,
Hey, maybe he had.
I can't verify.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Baby Doll came out. She warned Arn he was next. Arn told her women were put on this earth to make dinner and make babies.
It was so amazing because they're acting like victims. They are acting like they have been wronged, and they're good people, unlike Dusty Rhodes. And Baby Doll comes up and says, "You're next," and all of a sudden he just erupts on, "You're a woman, you're good for nothing but making babies and cooking." Loses his mind because they're dicks.
Your wife was in the room with us. She did not like this line. But for the record, your pregnant wife had just made dinner.
Oh, Vinny.
Just saying.
Wow.
Just poor timing. That's
Wow.
Just poor timing. Flair then said, "Baby Doll, if you had ridden Space Mountain, you'd be like this." And he laid himself out on the floor in the starfish pose and just stopped moving. He left her laying. This was something else.
No comment.
Jimmy Valiant versus...
What are you sighing for? This is the highlight of the show.
This is the highlight of my life.
Jimmy Valiant versus a jobber.
A geek whose
Who was-
name I didn't get, but he was so much worse than Jimmy Valiant.
He was such a jobber that he was the only guy on the show they didn't even put his name on the screen.
Yes.
He had no graphic. There was no way to identify this man.
At one point in commentary, they called him Bevins. So Mr. Bevins, apparently, is his name. I don't even want to know his first name. He's just Bevins. This was so ungodly terrible. This is the kind of special kind of terrible where you watch this and think, people thought this was real. Jimmy won with his dancing elbow smash. The whole time he's wrestling, by the way.
Must have been Adrian Bevins.
All right. J.J. Dillon and Tully Blanchard have stated publicly that their plan is to attack Jimmy Valiant and put him out of action and put him on the shelf. After saying this, they came out to ringside to watch this match. And after Valiant left, they cut their 84th promo of the show.
Before we get to that, let's talk about Valiant's finish. Whatever my wife thought of the promo, life turned around when she saw Jimmy Valiant do his dancing boogie woogie elbow drop.
Yeah.
I rewound it. If it would have been easier
watched
to
the whole
rewind,
match.
I did because it's Apple TV. If it would be easier to skip back 30 seconds on Apple TV, I'd have watched it 100 times because it got better every single time. Mostly because the setup for the elbow was he had to throw this jobber into the ropes and hit a clothesline. That's fucking it. Okay, this was too much for this jobber. He couldn't hit the ropes. He could barely bounce. And then he took the worst bump of all time. And then Jimmy did his boogie-woogie dancing elbow. Goddamn. The hell happened to wrestling?
There was no more Jimmy Valiant.
Nothing on Raw will be better than Jimmy Valiant's elbow drop tomorrow. Even Vince.
Oh, God, no. So Tully and JJ then say, they just vowed to take out all of Dusty's friends, a point they'd already made very clear. Jim Cornette came out for a promo bragging about winning Manager of the Year in Pro Wrestling Illustrated. He has been calling out the Rock and Roll Express for months now with no reaction or no answer from the Rock and Rolls. And so finally, to get the Rock and Roll's attention, he distracted them after a squash match, and the Midnights jumped them from behind and beat him up. And so Cornette cuts this promo saying, now we have your attention, now we're going to take your belts and put you out of wrestling for good, and there's nothing you can do about it. This is something else we need to bring back in 2015. Challengers calling out champions for months and getting no response, so it's a big deal when they finally attack them.
I loved how happy Cornette was to be the PWI 1985 Manager of the Year.
Yeah.
A mere decade later, we mocked Nova for talking about his ranking in the PWI 500.
Well, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. Loverboy Dennis. That's what it said. Loverboy Dennis versus Rocky King. I have not seen a ton of Dennis Condrey. I assumed he was primarily a heel tag team guy and also a pretty good brawler. God, he was awesome here.
He was great.
They did some great chain wrestling.
Cornette talked about how women around the world were jealous of Rocky King for being in the ring with Loverboy Dennis.
That's right.
Until they saw the brainbuster at the finish.
He may have legit killed him with a brainbuster. He lifted him up for a suplex and then dropped him straight down onto his head.
If we don't see Rocky King again after this show, I'm sure he's dead.
Yeah. So yeah, Dennis Condrey was awesome. Dusty and Baby Doll came back out for another promo. Dusty made fun of Flair for, and I quote, having a spasm of some sort earlier. He said Flair's story of Baby Doll chasing Flair around a hotel wasn't true. The truth was, Baby Doll had turned Flair down due to lack of size.
See, that's a lie. And we know that. There are legal papers talking about the size of Flair's Johnson.
I've heard many witnesses.
And how he spun it around like a lasso.
Yeah.
So Dusty's not telling the truth here.
Many
or
witnesses
Baby Doll's lying.
have said that Flair is proud of his girth and is not ashamed to show it off, and they have seen it with their own eyes. But Baby Doll did not deny that here. No, she said she may have had sex with Flair, except he had a small dick.
She didn't say those exact words.
It's the message she implied.
Well, yeah.
All of this is so bizarre. Magnum TA versus the Barbarian.
They called it a dream match. Now, let me tell you something. Big fan of the Barbarian. Not once did I ever dream of seeing this match.
Wake up in the morning. Man, that Barbarian Magnum TA match in my head was so great.
Damn it, I woke up. It's going along so great.
Harley Race comes out to do commentary. We talked earlier about he appeared to be old in this show, and he did himself no favors when he talked about losing the U.S. title to John Valentine in Greensburg.
Greensburg, North Carolina.
Yeah.
He talked about the match with the Barbarian.
I hope Barbarian.
The Barbarian.
Not even just Barbarian.
I gotta say that, like, I had such a love-hate relationship with Harley's talking on this show, because the promo we did earlier was, like, it was a good tough guy promo, but he wouldn't have even passed a WWE tryout when it was promo time.
No.
And then, like, he's doing this commentary, and I can't decide if it's just, like, fucking horrendous or if it's awesome. Because per the standards of Jay Lethal, for example, he was terrible. But everything he said was funny and fit perfectly into the beer-drinking, tough guy, tough as nails, Harley Race character. Referee gets bumped and he's yelling at the ref, "Hey, you just got brushed!" All of this just tough guy, take no bullshit. It was weird. I couldn't decide if I loved it or hated it.
I've been a critic of Paul Jones in the past, but I will say this man, at times, knew how to be a heel. Because about 3 minutes in, He comes up to the announce desk and says, I am claiming a moral victory. We have ended Magnum TA's streak of 30-second wins. Then he went back to watching the match.
Yeah.
What a tremendous chump.
What an accomplishment.
We have managed to not lose in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So, match went on. Magnum, this is the second time in a week we've watched him. He was such a great brawler. His punches looked awesome, and he'd be throwing these right hands, then he'd take one headbutt, and he'd sell it all great like he was woozy. He was awesome.
Let's cut to the chase.
All right.
Magnum has the win, but the referee has been brushed, as Harley Race says.
Check.
Brushed so hard he was thrown out of the ring and killed.
Yes.
Harley thinks this guy's the biggest pussy for this.
Yes.
So Magnum has a win, no referee. Paul Jones comes in, waffles Magnum with his cane. Barbarian makes the cover. And Harley Race says, we need a referee. The ref's down. Harley runs in and counts the pin. Now, unlike on Nitro, this is not official.
No.
Then we get the best thing I've ever seen. Harley Race and the Barbarian become besties. They double team Magnum. Harley Race and the Barbarian. And then Harley Race looks at this wild man and he gestures to the top rope. Let's go do our headbutt together. That's Harley's plan.
Yeah.
And they go to the top rope and they deliver a double headbutt to Magnum. I was like, I can't even. This turned into a dream match.
And Magnum, by the way, sold this double headbutt. He did not grab his head and moan and roll on the mat. Magnum lay there like a deceased person.
He lurched and then laid in dead man's position.
Yes. He was done for.
Now that I think about it, in my wildest dreams, I could not imagine a scenario where Harley Race and the Barbarian are best buds.
So Race goes to cut a promo. He says, and this is truth, he had hit the ring to count a pinfall, but he had never laid a finger on Magnum TA.
That's right, he's a victim.
Magnum had attacked him.
Yeah.
Harley had only defended himself. The Warriors returned. This is all one segment. This
Yes.
match, this Race promo, and the Road Warriors coming out. The Road Warriors go on about what they're going to do to the Russians or whatever. And Paul Jones in 1986, the fans called him Weasel. Obviously, that name would go on to a far superior manager before all was said and done. But the fans were chanting Weasel at Paul Jones, and so they had a shirt. They said, in life, there's two kinds of people. There's weasels, and there's weasel slappers. At this point, Hawk unveiled a T-shirt that he had custom made that read, in pink letters, Weasel Slappers.
Wow.
And he gave this gift to Tony Schiavone. That was an awesome rib.
Weasel slapper.
Weasel Slappers.
Man.
They went to commercial, came back, and we had the best thing I ever saw in my life. Tony Schiavone interviewing Jimmy Valiant. I don't even know what to say.
I do. You won't believe me when I say this, but Mark Briscoe would have thought this man out of his mind.
Yeah. There actually are some similarities between the two, but Mark Briscoe was at a 10 and Jimmy Valiant was at about a 17. Like, just look at him clapping and bobbing his head and two-stepping back and forth all the time. And I mean all the time.
Oh, yeah.
This man was never still. This man was never sedentary. This man was in constant motion. He said it was no secret that he was friends with Dusty. They were tight like Willie and Waylon.
Willie and Waylon.
Yeah. And if those horsemen, if they think I'm a target, if they want to come and take me out first, I dare them to come out right now and try. That was the best. To recap.
Jimmy's great.
In 2016, we need more Ron Garvins.
Yep.
We need more Ric Flairs.
Yep.
More Mac Jeffers.
Yeah, way more of them.
And a lot more Jimmy Valiant.
Yep. That about covers it.
Probably some other things I missed in the show. Sam Houston and Nelson Royal versus Pablo Crenshaw and Don Turner.
So this match starts, and I use the facilities. I'm gone for maybe 30 seconds. I'm hoping I don't miss any action. But by the time I get back, the match is over. And literally all I saw of this match, which to me was all I needed to see, was Sam Houston hitting his Bulldog finisher and nearly wiping out his own fucking partner.
Yeah.
God!
Nelson Royal He was old and fat and bald here. He'd been many-time junior heavyweight champion. He can still move, but you could tell he just didn't
Moved
care.
up a weight class.
He may have moved up a weight class. You could tell he didn't care. He was out there to get in and out and get his money and go home.
Why the fuck would he care?
I don't know.
He was teaming with Sam Houston to take on Don Turner and Pablo, or as it was announced last week, Pablo Crenshaw.
I don't have an answer to that. Magnum TA cut a promo saying he'd had Barbarian beaten. Everyone knew it. And Race, you were many times world champion, but that was in the past. Today, I'm the U.S. champion. You're not. I will defend this belt against anyone. And Race, I don't think you're half the man you used to be.
Wow.
Them's fighting words.
Especially to Harley Race.
That is words to fight over.
Criminies.
And that was that. And that was, as usual, a very fun show.
Yeah, that was great. That one week that this show was the worst show I ever saw,
Such an aberration.
we can now officially say that was an aberration.